Guess I should be happier when the morning comes. Find out, let's check our microphone. Then only for a minute, I wanna change your mind. This is all to me. I wanna raise your spirit. Oh, wow, that's like buzzy buzz. Why are you buzzy buzzing? Why you buzzy buzzing? Don't buzzy buzzing. Hi, good morning. Oh my god. Hi, good morning. Oh god, do I even know what I'm doing here? I don't even know what I'm doing. Ah! Okay, hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Then only for a minute, I wanna change your mind. This just don't feel right to me. Let's see. Do you see my boyfriend? My boyfriend's back. My boyfriend's back and you're gonna be in trouble. Hey, ma, my boyfriend's back. Hey, baby girl. Sister Lee. Hey, Sister Lee, how you doing today? I love you, Lee. Good morning. Happy Monday. First meetings blow. Well, I predict today is going to go very swimmingly. That's right. I said it. I said today's going to be pretty okay. I don't like to go superlatives, but I'll just say pretty okay. Badger, badger, badger. Man, I got all my sisters with me. We are family. I got all my sisters with me. You guys are so awesome. I love you too. Gray and Dreary. Okay, good. Excellent. And Dre and Greary. Dre and Greary. Did I just say that? Gray and Dreary. Holy fuck. Gray and Dreary are is snuggly. That's the way I'm looking at it now. Actually, we could use a gray and dreary day here, but of course I don't wish that on anybody because if they don't want it, God, I don't want to be that person. I don't want to do that. Let me make this a little smaller so you can see I don't think you can really see my boyfriend, but that's okay. Yeah, I hope you have a great day. I think Mondays are sometimes to be gotten through. Sometimes they're lovely, and sometimes, well, maybe they're not. Anyway, I think I need to lower my boyfriend. That's what I'm going to do because my camera's like too high. I look like I'm sitting with my chopped head off. But I'll try and do that. I'll fix it later. I can probably fix my camera. But anyway, good morning. I tried to make my face bigger because I realize if you're watching this on a phone, well, it doesn't matter. I don't know. But I feel like I should probably have that. Helene hangover. Oh, typical fall weather. Have to face the fact that winter is on the way. That's a tough thing, Lee. Good morning, butterflies. How are you, darling? That is kind of, yeah, bigger is better. There you go. Sometimes. I have no idea what my camera's like. It might be on 4K or whatever that 2160 is. I'm like, don't do it. Get away from me. Anyway, good morning. Let's see. Yeah, I know. Oh, Helene. God, I was looking at pictures of Asheville last night. And I remember going to Asheville and driving by the valley portion of Asheville because I was on my way to Blowing Rock, which is up in the mountains in North Carolina. Because I lived in Raleigh for literally a minute. A minute. Just stayed mostly. But after I left my abusive boyfriend. It's just devastating. I love North Carolina. I love Raleigh. That that city means so much to me for many reasons. And just to see what's happened. And the valley part where Asheville, where the devastation is, always seemed to me like, the stepsister area of the Asheville kind of like experience. And it just makes me so sad that those are the people who live and work there and, make it a destination for people. So it's just, we should all, people who, hi Neil, hi love, we hear you, you're here, we see you. Um, I don't know. I hope that I got to find a way to make a donation. I'll do that. But it, in addition to that, uh, I just really want us to collectively lift each other up. Because everything is being made political these days, and that's just so sad to me. That's really sad to me. It's really sad to me the amount of politicking on this issue that I've seen. So it's just really, I'm going to fix my camera because actually I feel like my head is like sitting. Hi. I'm the headless horseman. This is the head of the headless horseman, and I don't know where my body is. Hello. Hello. Hold on. Hold on just a second. Let me just. I don't want to go too low. Okay, that's probably better. That looks a little more normal. You'll just have to see his big knife. My boyfriend's big knife. Have you seen my boyfriend's big knife? Anyway, okay, let me tell you how proud I am of myself. I was listening to music last night and I was rolling joints. And I rolled myself. I'm so proud of myself. This is like Marie Kondo of weed. I'm the Marie Kondo of weed. And I need people to recognize my divinity. I have a neck. Hello. She has a neck. So I rolled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Hey, wait. I thought I rolled 7. Maybe it's just 6. Did the cat smoke one of my joints last night? Is that what's going on here? Anyway. I rolled 6 joints. Well, now rolled is not the word. Because these are those cones, the cones that you get from Zigzag. Maybe you don't. But anyway, you can get these cones that are like all ready, but you just stuff them and then you kind of like pinch them at the top. That's what I did. I was really proud of myself because it's like I didn't stop to smoke any. Wait, where's my music? In nomine Patris et Filii et Spiritus Sancti. I'm like the goddess of weed. If God was going to make a weed person, I hope I'd be on the short list. Maybe not. And that's fine. I'm sure there's better people on the short list for that than me. And that's fine. I can handle that. Yeah, I'm kind of late to the game of being a total stoner. So that's cool. I'm reliving my college. No, I'm not reliving my college days. I'm actually just chilling. And it really helps my arthritis. So there you go. I have a twofer. Anyway, good morning. I hope your weekend was good. Oh my God. Did anybody do anything really fun this weekend? I did not. So I'm going to cut to the chase. I don't have a story for you. So do you guys have any stories? Anything happen? Something great? Something terrible? You don't have to share. Don't share any personal details. I have to pretty much wrap by like in about maybe 2 hours. It's probably going to be like a 2-hour, 2.5-hour stream today. I don't think there's any congressional stuff for us to do. And I was going to do the Doug Frank, like go into his other work. But I think I have to help with something at like, I just don't want to, it kind of threw me off when I found out I was going to do some stuff today. And so I don't want to get into the show about his stuff. Plus, I'm not sure I want to talk too much about him unless he's going to come on my show, which I have invited him through Rusty Testicles. You made your first lasagna? Holy shit. That is so great, Lee. Did you put what was some of the layers? You went to the farmer's market and only oh, Max. That's boo-boo. I'm sorry. No, Neil, stop. Stop. Don't drive off the road. I love making lasagna. And Lee, I don't know if you find this. I hope you do. My lasagna tends to taste better the next day. So the leftovers of lasagna I find can taste better than the original. I know. It's a spicy attitude. But it is true. It sounds so delicious. I'm ready. I'm ready for like a big like eggs benedict breakfast. I'm ready for like breakfast potatoes. So breakfast potatoes. Actually, I don't really like breakfast potatoes, but you can't. Oh, I don't do the no boil, Max. I actually just use regular lasagna noodles and don't boil them. I use them dry always in my lasagna, and it always works because the water in the sauce cooks the noodles. So that's what I do, and I haven't had any utter failures. I mean, obviously, I don't always make great stuff. Yeah, typical noodles, meat, ricotta, mozzarella sauce. I agree on the leftovers, as one person household lasagna isn't practical. You know what, girl? I feel you. I've done it. I've been there, done that. If I want a lasagna, God damn it, I'm gonna have a fucking lasagna. And ain't nobody gonna. And if I throw away the rest of that lasagna, I don't care. I'm not going to feel guilty. This is the new age of let's not feel guilty about those types of things since everybody else is not feeling guilty about all the shitty things that they do, like with intention. Bechamel. I do put a bechamel in my lasagna. I do. I put a bechamel layers in my lasagna. It does freeze. Oh, that's really good, butterflies. Thank you. You actually are amazing. It freezes. It does freeze. And butterflies, do you freeze it before you bake it or after or both? I mean, you could do both. I think, right? I don't know if you could can you? I wonder. You know what I don't have though is good freezer stuff that keeps, you know what I mean, freezer containers that don't like fuck it up or anything. I don't know. I love lasagna. I like making a really good lasagna. Oh, you know what else? Oh my God, I have this recipe. Holy shit. I've talked about this before. Oh, freeze before. That makes sense. Uh, I, oh man, what was I going to say? Oh, I have this pasta recipe. I think I've told you guys about it. It's like from, it's the chick that used to have a show on PBS and she was from the North End in Boston. And which is the big Italian section. If you haven't been to the North End in Boston, please, 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 please. I don't know if it's still okay, but I lived in Boston for quite a while. And I love Boston so dearly, so very dearly. And am I buzzing? I am. Okay. Um, now I need lasagna for breakfast. That's right, Badger. That's exactly where I'm going with this. No, but this recipe is a little bit anti lasagna, and it's you could make it as a rolled pasta, which is actually a little challenging because you used to have to make the pasta itself, you know, and like roll it out really super thin. But you can also do this with like lasagna noodles or anything really. But the foundation of this dish is spinach, ricotta, you know, a little egg to make it fluffy, roasted pine nuts, parmesan, and that's it for like the mixture, and spinach, right? So that's like the mixture spinach with all of those things in it. And then also you can put a little prosciutto in it, like a little prosciutto would be good. And so then you make that mixture and with the ricotta, and then you layer that as your your meat layer, right? The spinach becomes the meat, if you will. And then the sauce, oh shit, get ready for a cheese orgasm. The sauce is mascarpone, heavy cream, gorgonzola, and you make a shit ton of it. I love pine nuts. Oh, and you put some nutmeg in the spinach too. You grate a little nutmeg into it. And I'll post the recipe because she does a beautiful job of it. And she makes it as a roll, but really, think of it as any pasta. It's so it's orgasmic. So you make this gorgonzola sauce. You've got the spinach and cheese mixture, and that becomes the layers of your dish, of your pasta dish. And then, oh no, we're not done. Then you bake it with a little bit of sauce in it, but then you pour the sauce over the baked pasta dish. My mouth is watering. I mean, it is so good. I'm gonna post the recipe because this woman, fuck man, I got her. I bought her cookbook like in the 90s. It's amazing. I'll find her name. Hold on. She was a PBS person. Really fucking good. Really. And so funny. I mean, she's cute as hell. What the fuck was her name? Marie? No. Wait, what was her name? Anna? No. All right. Rotolo. Oops. That's not right. Hi, Jim. You've dropped off the puppy to get spayed. We're getting the pool closed and it's raining. Oh, I'm sorry, Jim. You know what? We just talked about that. And let me see if I can find this. But only for a minute. Oh, Ciao Italia. Okay, so her show was Ciao Italia. Oh, wait, I'm going to show you this. Oh, man. I got to bookmark this bitch. Okay, hold on. That's not a propaganda source. We'll choose another one. Okay. Oh my God, Rotolo di pasta. This is the actual recipe. I'm going to show it to you. Hold on. It's so good. You guys, you gotta check it out. Okay, let me take care of the campfire. Boop. 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 La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. There we go. Rotolo di pasta. Ciao Italia. That's what it looks like when she does it, because you roll up everything in a pinwheel and you slice it and then you bake that with this. Oh, fuck. You know what? I don't know why I'm not married. I just don't know why I'm not married, okay? I'm just kidding. I just don't know. I'm just not kidding. I don't know. Anyway, so I used to make this for my bestie who passed away. She loved this so much. I would have to make it every time I came and visit. So this always reminds me of her. She's so amazing. Anyway, Ciao Italia. I don't want to divert you with my emotional trips down memory lane, but this was a very special dish between me and my bestie. Okay, wait, what's her name? About me. She has a foundation? Wow. I'll link this. I'm going to link this in the chat, okay? I'm telling you right now, buy her book. Italian food, buy this woman's book, please. Please. Please and thank you. Okay, let me go ahead. Do it to it. Do it to it. Do it to it. Do it to it. All right, Ciao Italia. Anna, what's her name? I'm so embarrassed that I don't remember. Oh, it's so good. Butterflies, you won't be disappointed. I dare anybody not to like this, really. I really do. I dare you not to like this. I dare you. I double dog dare yous. I double dog dare yous. Let me move this over here, and that's going to go over there, and this is going to go over here, and that's going to go over there. Here. Oh, anyway. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. We should do we have so much reading to do. Let me see. Is anything else happening like really great today? I don't even know. Let's check out the world. Oh,
overall of these members are voting members of the DeKalb County Republican Party.
Okay, wait, hold the phone.
As the chair of the DeKalb County Republican Party, are you aware, one way or the other, of whether your membership is concerned about election integrity?
Yes, our membership is very concerned about fitness, faith, integrity, and trust in our elections. Many of the people in this courtroom are actually members of the DeKalb County Republican Party here in support of our petition today.
Does your background in the field of cybersecurity have anything to do with the positions you've taken as the chair of the DeKalb County GOP?
Yes, when I was elected and reelected as the DeKalb County chair, I ran on my number one thing was to first restore and then ensure fitness, faith, integrity, and trust in our elections.
Listen, you
And as I mentioned earlier, I was elected unanimously both times.
Really?
Right,
Maybe you lied.
How did you, or when did you first become aware that there was an issue with encryption keys in Georgia's election systems?
I first became aware of the problems when I read a CISA, which is the Cybersecurity Advisory for the United States, as well as an FBI report putting out information on a distributed denial service attack on the potential for that to happen, also known as a DDoS attack on our election communication equipment. And I was doing research for some speaking engagements as well as some content for our programs. And what a DDoS does is it is a diversion. So it is an immense amount of web traffic that brings down the front door of basically your website. But what's happening on the back end of your infrastructure can be very nefarious. And I was putting together a list of different types of things that would potentially happen for our program and these speaking engagements overall. So they range from ransomware, phishing attacks, as well as exfiltration and upwards type of credentialing where they take over through phishing type of campaigns, advanced persistent threats. And you had no knowledge that this might be happening on the back end because the diversion activities of the DDoS attack take away your resources.
All right, so how did the issue of encryption keys fit into what you just described?
Well, encryption keys are basically the storage and the ability to anonymize data that is going in and authenticate data that would be going in and out of an infrastructure or device.
Is the encryption keys issue a partisan or ideological issue to your knowledge?
I wouldn't understand why that would be. You want to have your information stored securely as a end user of a financial services system like a banking system. There's an expectation that it is safe and secure regardless of your political ideology or affiliation.
Understand how it
when
works, so I
you
defer
check into
to
the doctor's
experts.
office and share medical information with your providers, again, I don't think the doctor's asking you if you're a Republican or Democrat. It's an expectation the system that you're using is safe and secure in protecting your information.
So when was it then that you first became aware of the encryption keys issue relative to the Georgia election system?
I became aware of it in late July, early August of this year.
All right, ma'am. How did the party, your county party, decide to become the plaintiff or applicant in this case?
Well, we follow our bylaws very strictly. And my concerns as a cybersecurity professional have been raised numerous times with my members overall. So I've offered different types of best practices, quite frankly, from protecting their own identities, how we use our own passwords for applications in our own infrastructure.
We'll find out.
So with that said, I've been educating my members since I've been in office overall. So the fact of the matter is we are equally concerned about how we are authenticating systems, how we're accessing data in the systems, everything that resides in there. So they are very concerned about it.
All right. So was there some kind of vote?
Yes. So I presented my concerns to our executive committee and our general counsel, outlining the encryption keys here and the passwords that are that are not being
He's so
changed
distracted.
overall, and that the encryption keys themselves are static code into in the source code in the database, and that actually defies many best practices around cybersecurity coding overall. And in the commercial world, that would actually be unacceptable. So I presented this information to our executive committee that we pursue a legal action overall to protect all Georgians, quite frankly. My executive committee agreed on the advice of our general counsel, proceeded to
Do you
present
see why I
a
was
motion
screamed about
to
election
engage
frauds?
in
You
litigation
understand?
to our
I've
county
driven
committee
myself
members.
insane.
There was a vote for that, and actually
And
encryption
here
keys
we
were
are.
used. It was anonymized in the voting because we used voting technology because we were doing this on a remote basis. And it was what we were able to do is overwhelmingly majority voted in favor to move forward with this litigation.
All right, thank you. What are the purposes of the DeKalb County Republican Party?
Well, our purposes
Well,
of the
when you
DeKalb
find out,
Republican
let us
Party
know.
is to vote DeKalb red. So we are there to help our candidates for the first time in decades. We have many candidates on the down ballot, giving our citizens of DeKalb County a choice
Okay,
in our
she's Georgia
elections.
GOP.
We want to ensure that we have safe and secure elections, and we've done a ton of work with the DeKalb Elections Office, establishing a joint stakeholders organization, which is a collaborative effort with the Democrats, the Republicans, as well as the election office leadership, and have accomplished many different things. Additionally, we have built an amazing infrastructure
What
for
things?
our members and for our candidates to be successful.
All right, ma'am. Does this lawsuit align with the purposes of the DeKalb County Republican Party?
100% it does.
So what?
That's all the questions I have for you, Ms. McCarthy.
You're fucking
Thank you.
partisan.
Any
What the fuck?
cross-examination?
Nobody gives a shit about your opinion, you fucking partisan hack.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you, Brian Tyson, for the secretary. Good morning, Ms. McCarthy. My name is Brian Tyson.
I think that might have been
Secretary Raffensperger.
Garland
I just have a
Favorito.
few
Well, I don't know who
additional
that was.
questions
No, it wasn't
for
Garland
you.
Favorito.
Thank you.
But
Now,
it
you
sounded like him.
mentioned that you followed issues related to encryption in voting machines for a while. Is that right?
Please
That is
share the
correct.
broadcast.
And
Thank
you closely followed the Curling versus Raffensperger trial earlier this year, right?
Yes, I paid attention to that case.
And in fact, you appeared on multiple media platforms giving updates on the case. Is that right?
Yes, I'm often asked to be interviewed by different media, excuse me, different media outlets to speak on a number of different topics, including this one.
And one part of the Curling case involved Dr. Halderman's report. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And Dr. Halderman in his
Oh my
report
God.
specifically discussed issues related to encryption keys, right?
That is correct.
When did you first read Dr. Halderman's report?
After it came out in June of 2023.
So in June of 2023, you read what Dr. Halderman had to say about encryption keys, right?
Yes, I did.
And you have, as you testified, some background and experience in those areas, right?
That is correct.
And I believe Dr. Halderman's report you said was released in the summer of 2023. Is that right?
June of 2023.
Correct.
Well, to the public, you had it a lot longer.
What the fuck was
And you
that?
appeared on
need
the
your
John
fucking
Frederick
testimony,
Show in
bitch.
January 2024 to discuss the Curling trial, right?
I regularly appear on John Frederick's show.
Now, you're aware that the state Republican Party passed a resolution about voting equipment after the 2020 election, right?
Yes.
And you supported that resolution?
Yes, I support it.
And you personally opposed the use of Dominion voting machines in Georgia elections?
I oppose the use of equipment that cannot be verified and trusted.
And that
Oh,
would
and
include the
that
Dominion
sounds
voting
like a
machines
feeling.
in your view, right?
Well, actually,
That
yes,
sounds like-
because you
no,
cannot
fuck you.
trust and
Sounds like a
verify
feeling.
our vote right now in
That's
Georgia.
bullshit. Bullshit.
Now, you testified
sorry, I'm
as
getting
well
angry.
before
You
the
know how I feel
2020
about this stuff.
committee chaired by Senator Ligon after the 2020 election, right?
That is correct.
And did you do research on the Dominion system at that time?
No, I was a vote review panelist in DeKalb County, Georgia, And I was testifying on the lack of controls,
Look at all
inclusive
the
of
criminals
passwords,
this dude's
and
created.
checks and
Look at
balances
all the
with the
fucking lying
adjudication
criminals
process
he's
of our
created.
absentee ballots. And specifically, what I did testify on, it was the fact of the matter is that there were almost 900 absentee ballots that were improperly adjudicated. They had no locks and controls on them, and they were adjudicated
They just want people not to vote.
first by
That's
a
because,
bipartisan
Kathy,
pair
it's because they do
using
not
the
want people
Dominion
to vote.
equipment. Then they were put into a suspense mode to a nonpartisan pair,
They
which
want
actually
full
broke the laws
control
of how adjudication is supposed to be done with
information. That's
absentee
not going to
ballots.
happen with
And
any
those
company.
that nonpartisan pair, there was no log
Oh, I
files for
fucking
them
hate this
logging
guy.
into his system, and
Sorry,
we
I
all were
can't
using
with these
same
people
passwords.
anymore. I'm so
Mind
done
you, there
with
were
dumb
even no
shits.
locks and controls on the absentee ballots themselves, allowing them to change anything on those ballots. And the most
Bullshit.
common error of those ballots was the race for U.S. Senate, the special election that was there, where there was a jungle primary going on. So there was not a traditional nature of one or two candidates there. I believe that there were 18 candidates. And the most common error was the voters were filling in overvotes for all the Democrat candidates. And it was based on a nonpartisan pair who was represented by the League of Women Voters, who are actually more Democrat than the Democrats in the room. So they had full control of those ballots.
Wow.
And we still
this
don't know
fucking
present
bitch
day
can't
if those
fucking
ballots were
testify
accurate.
like a normal fucking
You're
human
aware
being.
that issues related
She's
to
just full of
encryption keys
feelings.
were raised in Arizona litigation
I'm
too,
so
right?
done.
I didn't follow that case.
Oh, really?
Now, you
Why
mentioned
not?
you were doing research on a report on the distributed
Why
denial of
not?
service attacks from the
Since
FBI
you're so
and
into
CISA when
erection
you started doing
integrity.
research on this issue. Is that right?
That is correct.
And a DDoS attack, or DDoS attack, I believe you referred to it, involves internet-connected systems, right?
That is correct.
And you're aware that SEB rules
Here we
govern the
fucking go.
security of voting system components in Georgia, right?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
And you're aware that one of those rules is that they cannot be connected to the internet, right?
I'm aware of that as well. But let me just add to
Here
that.
we fucking go.
The DDoS attack that's happening on the front door is a diversion. So what's happening on the inside of your infrastructure, whether they're directly connected or not, can be a diversion of your resources. So the fact of the matter is what's happening on the front door, because your website is forward facing. And if it did occur on election night,
Okay.
quite frankly, a DDoS attack, and several have already occurred in present day,
Okay.
preeminent to it.
Right.
When Twitter Spaces
Okay,
had
listen,
Elon Musk and
bitch.
President
Oh
Trump
my
there,
God,
there
bitch.
was a
You stupid
major
cunt.
amount of
That's not
web
an
traffic
election system.
activity. In
We're talking
addition, there
about
was a
Dominion
DDoS
election
attack.
systems.
Additionally, in
Oh, I'm
Florida, okay, just a
Look what
few
we
weeks ago
created.
during
Look
their
what's been
primary,
created.
there was a
Because
election
nobody could stand up to
communication
this
company
nonsense.
that
Look at what's
experienced
been
a
created.
high volume of traffic
where we
with
are.
an election that had very little election activity, making it near
Yeah,
impossible
but focus on all the
to
people that don't
the
tell
county
you that this
election
shit's happening.
offices that subscribe to these services to
Don't actually
access
know
for the
where the
public to
threats
access
are.
their information. So the diversion activities
Ugh.
that were taking place with the limited resources in security organizations across the board, exfiltration happens on the back end, or access to systems on the back end are very obscure and often are undetected.
In your work on
What the fuck are
cybersecurity,
you talking
you're aware
about?
that
This again
physical
sounds like
security
feelings
is
and
an
not
important
facts.
part of overall cybersecurity, right?
That is actually in tandem. So you have everything from biometrics to physical security and log files. But, you know, when I was adjudicating ballots in DeKalb County, Georgia, there wasn't even a sign-in system to the machines that I was sitting in front of when I was sitting
That's
there, or
ridiculous. They
even
have
an
key. Oh my
adjudicator
God. Did
that
you
was
listen to
sitting
Tina
next to me.
Peters' case?
We simply
No, you
signed
didn't.
into the
You
elections
were too
office,
busy going to
and we're
Home
sitting there
Goods
for
and buying
hours and
shit that
hours.
says
And then there
live,
were
laugh,
batches of
love.
ballots that would come about.
That's what you were
So the
too
best
busy doing, you
practices of the
stupid
Secretary of
cow.
State's offices
Oh, R.I.P.
as it
Christopher
pertains to
Stofferson.
log files,
Oh
password
my
management
God.
is
That hit me really
despicable. It would
hard.
not hold up in a commercial sector.
God, I love him.
Let me
And
ask
Rita
you
Coolidge.
about
Rita Coolidge's voice, if you haven't heard
the allegations you have here
it's
in
just
this
so
case,
pure
you are
and
not
beautiful.
aware of
God,
any
I loved her.
actual manipulation of election results in
Them
Georgia
together- oh.
based on the claims you brought in this case,
On my
right?
thing
Our
yesterday,
Secretary of
against Chris
State and Gabe
Christopherson,
Sterling,
If you could
there's
answer
like
yes or
4 or
no, and
5
then you can
songs
explain
that
your
I
answer.
certainly
just like hit me.
they
So I don't
remain
know.
unproven
Check it out.
because the fact of the matter is Gabe Sterling, our Chief Operating Officer, I believe that's his title in present day. It changes frequently, as well as the Secretary of
feelings.
State,
More
make
feelings.
gracious claims on media and in public, social media, stating that Georgia
More feelings.
has the most safe and secure elections, not just in the country, but in the world. So you just put a target on
Excuse
Georgia's
me?
back and head to
Excuse
prove
me?
our elections to be safe and
Are you
secure.
kidding me?
The onus is on the Secretary of State's office. He is the custodian of our elections.
This woman
So
is
we
a
have the
fucking
right as
cult member.
citizens to ensure that we trust our election outcomes
Does
as
she
well
know
as
he
now
doesn't even believe
verify
that?
them.
He keeps saying that
And my
they
question was a
lost
little
by a
more
whisker.
specific.
Come on, bitch.
Are you aware
Catch
of any
up with your
actual
Fuhrer.
manipulation of Georgia election results that have occurred on the Dominion system?
There's still a lot of unexplained activities
That is
that have
bullshit.
occurred over the last 4 years that
Man,
are still
I guess
being
this issue kinda
litigated
gets
or
under my
reviewed
skin,
by
huh?
our State Board of Elections, as well as until the court system. So it remains unknown in present day.
And you personally
Who is this
believe that
fucking
voters
lawyer?
can never know for sure whether
Who
the
is this
voting
fucking
equipment
lawyer?
accurately reported that Joe Biden won Georgia in 2020, right?
Well, that is correct because you have a proprietary QR code that is doing the tabulation. That QR code, quite frankly, can even be read by a phone that reads a menu or it takes you to a website. So you're asking us to trust and
This is a
verify
really
a
important
ballot
hearing.
that
I
has
don't care
clear
if you share
text on
this
there, but
broadcast
not
or the
using that to
original
be
broadcast. I
tabulated
don't care.
overall.
please get
I
people
can't
to
read
watch this.
proprietary
I don't care where you watch it.
QR
People need to
codes,
watch
and neither
this.
can my phone, which is actually illegal to have in a voting precinct.
And you personally would support a system where Georgia voters vote on hand-marked paper ballots, correct?
I would support a system that we can understand and it is in clear text that our tabulation is taking place. So what I enter on my ballot, it can be trusted,
And multiple
verified. That is
disbarments
what is being tabulated on the
on
back
what
end.
she's
Yes.
saying.
And you don't believe the Dominion system today
And
provides that?
Why would you have a
$787 million
proprietary
paid
code?
Answer yes or no?
based
I
on what
don't
she's
trust
saying.
those systems,
Thank you.
and many people don't.
And you would say
That's
as
a
well that
feeling.
your goals in this case are similar to the goals of the plaintiffs in the Curling case, right?
No, we're simply asking for a prayer for relief here today is trust and validation, a simple validation of the election equipment that is in place. We're not asking it for being removed. We're simply asking for a validation by a third
what's your
party to
matrix?
ensure that that no one has tampered with anything, no one has touched anything, and what was entered in there was correct. And there's a number of ways to do that.
Could I have just a moment, Your Honor?
Well, while you're conferring, Mr.
Morning,
Tyson,
ma'am.
let me ask a question, Ms. McCarthy.
Kathy, if I
There
didn't
was
say hi to
reference
you,
to
I'm
the,
saying hi to you.
I believe it was the Haldeman report you referred to. I haven't reviewed that. Did that ever have any specific discussion of how Georgia was handling its encryption keys?
That report was created for Georgia in the Curling versus Raffensperger case.
All right, so the core of how you believe the encryption keys are being handled in this case, was that discussed in that report?
Yes, it is. Numerous other cybersecurity endeavors, yes.
Hey, Pepper.
And that was something you read when it was released in June 2023.
Yes, I did.
Mr. Tyson, you can follow up on that or anything else, and then I'll turn it back to Mr. McDougall.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have no further questions.
Ooh,
Mr. McDougall,
really?
any redirect?
You don't have
Yes,
any
Your Honor, thank
other
you.
questions, you stupid asshole?
Ms. McCarthy,
Who the fucking state of Georgia people
to
are?
your
Who are these?
recollection,
Have they just
in the Haldeman
learned about
report,
this?
is there any discussion of the relationship between encryption keys on the one hand and certification standards on the other?
There is a correlation there. The certification has to be done in alignment with the law.
But in the Haldeman report, when you read that, to your recollection, does it discuss certification issues or just encryption keys issue, if you remember?
I don't remember specifically, but I do remember that the numerous tests were done in Halderman's lab and performed them over a several week period and indicated that the machines themselves can be accessed and changed or manipulated both on premise and off premise, so illicit and illicit access.
All right, ma'am. And when did you first connect, in your mind, the encryption keys issue with the certification issue?
Well, we're talking about certification of elections by our board members, our state and county board members across the board.
Let me
So,
rephrase the question.
okay.
When did you first connect encryption keys issue with EAC certification?
Starting to dig into deeper, I would say probably more in the September timeframe, just to get a better understanding.
I like to
What
call
year?
it that.
This year.
You know, Jim, when these people are talking about election
your
integrity, which is
understanding,
what they love to talk about, I
would
feel
an
like it's more election
exploitation
integrity in that case.
Of
So
encryption keys
I choose to
detectable after
downplay
the
their
fact?
No,
hysteria
because
with
the
humor.
intrusion detection system that is being used, as I understand it, is the base model of the escort, quite frankly, and would not be acceptable in the commercial private sector. It doesn't have any bells and whistles. It's simply there as a device that's adjoining to it, and it doesn't have an ability to really respond and react, and certainly doesn't have any ability to prevent any types of intrusions. You're simply relying on log files after the fact.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Recross on those points, Mr. Tyson.
No, Your Honor.
Can this witness be excused?
You may be excused.
All right,
Your
thank you,
Honor.
Mr.
Thank you.
President. Step down. We do it, and call your next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. We will take up the court's suggestion to put our experts up before the authentication witnesses so that we can get them up and down.
All right. And so your next witness is?
I call Clay Parikh to the stand.
Where's something difficult for me to hit myself with? Where is it?
Well, for that testimony, you did help you.
Yes, I do.
Please state, spell your first and last name for the court.
Yep. My name is Clay Parikh. It's ClayParikh.
All right, Mr. Parikh, where do you live?
I live in Huntsville, Alabama.
How are you employed?
I'm employed as a cybersecurity analyst for Northrop Grumman.
Give us a brief rundown of your employment history.
I've worked for all the
Well,
major
that's
Department of
interesting.
Defense contractors. I've also done work in the private sector. I've done vulnerability management, site design. I've
Number two.
played threat, which is known as red teaming or acting like the bad guy. And I've also done systems testing
Hi, Teresa.
to include system testing in voting system test labs.
Tell us about the
This is the
voting
night the
system
rights
test
went out
labs
in
work.
Georgia.
I was approached by a professional staffing company that was looking for a cybersecurity expert that had a CISSP, which is a Certified Information System Security Professional. And I went and looked at that, and it was a way for me to keep my technical skills up because it was to perform security testing at these voting system test labs.
And how long did you do that work?
I did that over a 9-year time span.
And, okay, what is your educational
Clay
background?
Parikh is the
I have a
famous
Master's of
Arizona
Science in
Carrie Lake,
Cybersecurity. My bachelor's, my
testifier
undergrad
who
is a
said
Bachelor of
20-inch
Science
ballots
in
on 19-inch
Computer
paper
Science.
or vice versa. I
All
don't
right,
know. 19-inch
do you
ballots
have
on
any military
20-inch
service?
paper. He got all
Yes, my
debunked
first profession was as a
during
United
those
States Marine.
trials. So yeah, Clay's a loser.
And how long were you in the Marine Corps?
22 years.
And what type of work did you do for the Marine Corps?
And now why are you
I did
trying
whatever
to
I
sow
was told to
distrust in
do.
our system, sir?
Did any of it relate to cybersecurity, or was it digging holes?
No, we had security, and if you in the CISSP realm, there are 10 domains that they talk about, and they deal with physical security encryption. I worked in what's known as the CMS vault, where encryption materials were stored. So you learn about chain of custody, procedural stuff. Then, of course,
This
there's
is
always
Clay from
physical
ITT.
security.
All right, sir.
ITT Technical Institute
You've
or
covered
whatever the
this a little
fuck it
bit,
is.
but
It's
give it-
basically
tell us anything else
DeVry
that you haven't told
University
us
or
that
whatever
has to
those
do
little
with professional
dial-a
background
diplomas
in
are, you know?
cybersecurity.
I've done the cybersecurity realm for over 20 years. I've held the CISSP for over 17 years in good standing, certified plenty of professionals under that certification.
Well, good. I'm going
I
to be
was
looking into
certified
that
ethical
board.
hacker for, I believe, 15 years and a cyber forensic hacking investigator
Oh my
for 12
God.
years.
I hate this.
All right. Do you have any experience in
International thief.
performing cyber investigations in criminal investigations?
Yes, I have.
Describe that to the what government were you working for and so forth.
I was working for the U.S. government, and in general terms, I would just say the investigations were with three-letter agencies, and one was with NASA, and the other two were Department of Defense related.
In the course of
Who would
your
hire Beaker? Who
training,
the fuck's going to hire Beaker?
experience, and education, have you had any experience with encryption keys?
Yes, quite extensive.
Can you
You know what? And that's not actually a
describe the
credential.
purpose of using encryption keys?
Encryption keys it's the part of cryptography that is to keep confidentiality involved. And so you use them to encrypt and decrypt files. You can use the security certificates and stuff for secure
Not this
communications.
Beaker is what I'm saying.
It's
Beaker might
basically
be fine. This
a
Beaker.
form of confidentiality under credentials management.
All right, sir. Are you familiar with how encryption keys are supposed to be handled?
Yes.
What cyber security experience do you have with respect to electronic or computerized voting systems?
I was a security tester for several of the voting system test labs during that 9-year period.
Did you do any test work on Dominion systems?
That's a good one.
Yes.
Wait.
What is the EAC?
The EAC is the Election Assistance Commission, which was established under the HAVA, the Help America Vote Act.
And this testing lab work you did, does that have anything to do with EAC certification of election systems?
Yes, it does. The EAC has these certification labs. The voting system testing laboratories have to go through a certification process themselves, which NIST co-chairs with the EAC.
What's NIST?
It's the
Isn't it
governing
funny?
body
We
that
got
looks over
we got
technology and
letters that
laboratory
stand for
research.
things.
And
Isn't that funny?
they do the
that
laboratory
funny?
inspection part of the voting system test labs. That's not really in
This
the
dude's like a secret
EAC's,
passport bro.
cog.
Is that the National Institute of Standards Technical?
Technology.
I'm just kidding.
In the course of your test lab work on election systems, did you ever attempt penetration or hacking of those systems?
Yes, I did.
Not without
And
consent.
how long would it take you to get into one of those systems?
5 to 10 minutes. My best time's 2.5 minutes.
Can you describe the difference between an insider threat and an outsider threat in cybersecurity
I don't think I'd brag
terms?
about that.
An insider
just saying.
threat, there are basically two types.
I'm
An
just
outsider threat is someone totally out of the organization that has relatively no knowledge or access. An insider threat is an authorized person. And this can be done, there's two categories, accidental
Insider
and intentional.
outside. Oh yeah,
And
the
of course, intentional
accidental
would be
or
like
intentional.
sabotage
Like when I spilled
and
my
stuff like that.
Pepsi,
Negligence,
that was an
The
accident.
thing about an insider threat is it not only includes the organization, it includes any contractors or vendors who have access to said systems. For example, it could even include janitors that do, because of the physical security aspect.
And so the vendor of an election system would be within the rubric
Insider threat realm,
Insider
yes,
threat.
sir. Yes, sir.
All right. You have a binder on the table in front of you, and I ask you
I'm
to turn
afraid to
to
click it.
tab number 14. And there's a document there that is marked as Exhibit 14, which is
If
applicant's
multiple
Exhibit
people
14.
don't
Can
clip
you identify
Clay
that
Parikh
document?
talking about
Yes, this is my
2.5 minutes of penetration.
sir,
You guys
and,
don't even deserve to watch this. If you don't clip that and
If you
take
would
it and
turn
make
to
it your
tab number
own.
15. And the document marked there as Exhibit 15, tell the court what that is.
Yes, this is the cover letter that whenever I applied for jobs that I always submitted. It includes my
International
additional
thief.
work experience and cyber experience outside of the normal DoD world contracting. Because it states, I was an avid member of InfoGuard, which is a organization underneath the Federal Bureau of Investigations. I participated in that, and it lists the voting system test lab work and experience.
All right. Now, you mentioned a certification you had, CISSP. Are there any other certifications that you have?
Yes, I had the Certified Ethical Hacker and the CHFI, which is a
Is
Certified
he going to
Hacking
offer
Forensic
him as an
Investigator.
expert? Because I can't wait
All
for
right, Your
that.
Honor, at this point, I would tender applicants' Exhibits 16 and 17.
14 and 15?
14.
12 and 13?
14 and 15, I
10, 11.
apologize. Thank you
Why
for the
not?
Any
correction.
objection to 14,
No.
15?
No objection, Your
All
Honor.
right, admitted without objection.
Is Clay testifying as an expert? Because I
In the
need
course
to
of
know.
your work at the testing lab, did you become familiar with the requirements for an election system to be certified by the EAC?
Yes, it was one of the very first things that I had to do. The very first laboratory I worked for was Wiley Laboratories, and they wanted to become a certified lab. And so they submitted their testing procedures to me to do an independent review, and they were going to submit that review to the EAC as evidence to help them that their
Well,
procedures
that's
were
actually
sound.
like an internal
So therefore, I had
review,
to
you stupid
read
shit.
what is known as
You're
the
hired by
VSS,
them to
which
do-
were under
oh
the
my
Federal
God.
Elections Commission's very old guidelines. And then I read the HAVA Act itself, and then the Voluntary Voting System Guidelines, both 1 and 2 that were out at the time.
All right, sir. What election system is used in Georgia?
It is a Dominion System DVS 5.5 Alpha.
And is that system, to your knowledge, certified by the EAC?
Yes, it's required to.
All right, sir. Are you familiar with the
Why are we
Dominion
here?
system that's used in Georgia?
Anybody?
Yes, I'm very familiar.
Anybody?
How are you familiar with it?
I've reviewed a lot of the system log information, as well as for the databases that were provided via public record request.
Is the EAC certification document for the Dominion system used in Georgia available on the internet, the certification document?
Yes, it resides on the EAC's website.
All right, sir, if you would please turn to tab number 16. And do you recognize that document?
Yes, this is a printout of the document. All right. Yes, 16 lists the Dominion system.
All right, sir, and the second paragraph of the text, well, before I ask him to read from it, Your Honor, I would tender exhibit number 16.
You guys, I'm
Objection to
almost
A16.
done
No
with
objection.
joint
Admitted.
2. Damn,
All right,
this is going too
Mr. Parikh, in the
fast.
second paragraph of the text,
Click the link that
starting
Oomph
voting
dropped. It's
systems,
the
what does
Fela
that tell
Kuti
us?
International Thief.
It says
It's
voting
so
systems
good.
will be tested against
a
the
good link,
Voluntary Voting
so hit
System
that link.
Guidelines, VVSG, which are a set of specifications and requirements to determine if the systems provide all of the basic functionality, accessibility, and security capabilities required. And I might add that there's also a state's requirements document that the EAC maintains. This is how the states get their HAVA grant money from year to year. That's one of the requirements of HAVA. Each state had to submit a plan originally when HAVA was created to the EAC and have it approved. And it lists Georgia, and in that document, it states the Georgia law applicable, where it also states that it has to be federally certified, and then the Secretary of State also has to certify it.
All right, sir. And so your testing was, as this exhibit 16 describes, against the voluntary voting system guidelines?
Yes.
All right, turn to tab number 17. And there's a document
Was that supposed to be a
there
flex?
marked as
I don't get
exhibit
it.
number 17. Can you identify that for the court?
Yes, this is the certificate of conformance, which is generated by the EAC from the test report that's submitted by the lab and reviewed. They submit a certification certificate on the front of it, but they call it certificate of conformance, and then it lists their evaluation of the voting system test lab testing report.
And this is for what system?
This is it's a model version 5.5 alpha.
And that's the one in use in Georgia?
Yes.
All right, Your Honor, I tender applicant's exhibit 17.
No objection.
A17 is admitted.
Hey, Carrie, how you doing, girl? I hope so. I keep tagging Dominion and shit, but
How
of
would you
course that doesn't
describe
mean
your
anything.
familiarity with the provisions of the voluntary voting systems guidelines?
I'm very familiar with them. I've actually been sat at the table with the EAC components that included the NIST representatives, and because they used to come around and audit the voting system test labs and check them manually. And part of the thing, and I would always get called in to speak to them, and they would ask me some questions. And I've actually commented on the voluntary voting system guidelines specifically because to me they're not standards, they're substandards. They do not meet the level of security requirements required for systems of high importance or criticality.
Okay, sir. I'll now ask you to turn to tab number 19. And that is marked on the upper left as exhibit number 19. And if you can identify that for the court.
This is the 2005 voluntary voting system guidelines.
And is that the version of the VVSG that was used in the EAC certification in exhibit number 18?
Yes, it is.
All right, Your Honor, I tender exhibit number 19, applicant's
Oh, I
exhibit
bet you
number
do
19.
tender.
No objection.
All right, and are you going back to 18, or are you also tendering that as well?
I'm skipping 18.
Okay, exhibit 19 is admitted.
What's that haircut again? What's that haircut with the little fringe bangs? Is that a Caesar or something? What is that? Is that a modified Caesar?
Does the
That's bothering me this
VVSG
whole time.
address cybersecurity requirements?
Yes.
Now, and you're familiar with those requirements?
Yes, I am.
Do you know what FIPS 140-2 is?
Yes, I do.
And how do you know that?
I had to repeatedly read it and explain to the software developers from the vendors exactly what it meant and how they have to properly implement it. And I've dealt with multiple vendors on this.
All right, sir. Turn to tab number 20, please. And that's a document marked exhibit number 20, applicant's exhibit number 20. Can you tell the court what that is?
That is FIPS publication 140-2.
Yeah, didn't we have this conversation
tender,
last time this
applicant's exhibit number
dickweed
20,
was on
Your
the
Honor.
stand?
No objection.
Exhibit 20 is admitted.
He was on the Tina Peters case too. You're going to see him a lot until people go to
Are
prison.
you
Hey,
familiar
speaking
with
of
how
which,
encryption keys are
this
employed
Thursday,
in
Tina Peters gets
electronic voting systems?
told what she's going to have
Yes,
to
I am.
do.
Are you familiar with how they're used in the Dominion system used in Georgia?
Yes, I am.
2.5 minutes.
Um,
I'm just going to say.
Are they important?
Clay 2.5 minutes Parikh. That's
they
what I'm calling
important?
him from now on.
They are highly important. That is the integrity of the whole
2.5
entire
minute
system.
man. That's what I'm going to call him.
All right. And are you familiar with the EAC certification requirements with respect to encryption keys?
Yes, I am.
Are you familiar with the EAC certification requirements with respect to storage and management of encryption keys?
Yes.
Are you familiar with what FIPS 140-2 has to say about encryption keys?
And their management requirements, yes.
Have you had occasion to examine any election databases of any Georgia counties that were used in the 2020 November election or recount?
Yes, I've examined 4 databases from Georgia.
What county, sir?
They were Appling, Bibb, Jones, and Telfair.
Just 4?
Have you examined those databases from those counties with respect to encryption keys?
Yes, I have.
Have you ever been qualified to testify as an expert before, admitted to testify as an expert before?
Yes, I have.
Approximately how many times?
Related to election stuff 3 times for sure.
And how about other issues, other cyber issues?
And what
Ye-
happened in those cases, Clay?
A
What happened
handful.
in all those cases that you testified in, Clay, baby? Come on.
As any of your expert testimony
proud.
where you were allowed to testify related to a Dominion system?
Yes.
Yes.
I'll answer for
Your
him.
Honor, I tender Mr. Parikh as an expert
Nope.
on
Nope.
cybersecurity,
Nope.
EAC certification
McAfee, don't
requirements
fucking
for
buy
election
it.
systems,
McAfee,
including the Dominion
read the
system in Georgia,
precedents.
how they handle encryption
He
keys,
lost all 3.
and what the
Harry Lake
requirements
2
are for
times.
certification on encryption keys.
And Tina Peters once. Clay's a 3-time loser, baby.
All right, any?
Is
before
someone
I go
going to
to witness,
object?
Mr. Tyson?
Yes, Your Honor, if I could, voir dire.
Oh, thank fucking God.
Good morning, Mr. Parikh. My name is Brian Tyson. I represent the Secretary. Appreciate your service to our country and the Marines. Thank you for that. I wanted to ask a couple of additional questions about your background and experience. Now, you indicated you worked for different voting system test labs that were certified by the EAC, right?
That's correct.
And you worked with ProVNV, but you were not directly employed by ProVNV.
No,
right?
I went through a professional staffing company.
And so you were not an employee of
He was a
ProVNV.
temp.
You worked for a staffing company
was a
that
temp.
ProVNV retained.
Yes.
And ProVNV is the
I don't know.
voting system
There's
test
something going
lab
on
that
there.
certified or that was involved in the certification of the Dominion system that's
It's like
used
a
in
landing
Georgia,
strip.
right?
Yes.
Yes, he was a
And you
temp.
last did any work with ProVNV in 2017, correct?
That is correct.
Was 2017 also the last time you laid hands on any Dominion voting equipment?
The actual hardware equipment? Yes, sir.
And you've never reviewed the current Dominion 5.5A software in your role at any voting system test lab, right?
Not in the role as a voting system test lab, but I have reviewed
just
plenty
as a
of
general
forensic
fucker.
reports and reports that have been evaluated and can confirm most of them are true.
And
Most,
you've not
but not
reviewed
all.
the Dominion 5.5A
Because I don't want
software
to,
in
you know,
Georgia, is that right?
I want to stay a little squirrely on this one, sir.
Reviewing the software, and this is according to ProVNV Lab, they never allowed security checks of the software. No voting system laboratory, which to me was highly
This is because they
strange.
deny
Normally,
the
you test
election
software
systems that we do
as
use.
for its functionality, its components, and the basic functions, but then it's required a security review because, for example, an administrative console can be manipulated. So it has to be security reviewed in how it functions. And that's normally, I work in a classified environment for the Missile Defense Agency, and that's how it's always done. First by the software developers and then by security.
Let me ask a better question. In terms of the opinions you're offering in this case, you're relying on your review of 4 databases, not of the Dominion voting system writ large. Is that right?
Yes, sir, but you're ignoring the fact that software development, they create an image and a versioning number, and the version used here is used across multiple states.
And you're not offering any opinions about the degree of risk. Is that right?
If you're asking me about the risk with these systems,
Mhm.
the risk is
He isn't.
highly.
He's
They
not.
have no integrity.
Oh, fuck you.
Let me ask this.
Fuck
Did
you,
you rely on
loser.
Dr. Halderman's report for any
Fucking
of the
loser.
findings in your declaration?
I've
This is
reviewed Dr.
because they deny
Haldeman's
the US
report,
EAC, which is the
and a
US
lot of the
Election Assistance
vulnerabilities that he
Commission,
pointed
part
out
of
were
the,
things that I had already
United
knew and
States
reported
government
to
that
test labs,
oversees
but
the
never
voting
made it to final
machines.
reports.
Okay? That's because
And
these
you
guys
reviewed the
deny
databases that were
the
provided to you
validity
by
of
Voter
oversight
GA,
by
is
the
that
US
right?
EAC.
That's correct.
So fuck him all the way off.
Are you being paid for your work?
As far as my investigative work,
For your testimony and your work in this
yes,
case?
for my testimony, yes, I am.
Oh, really? Not for the work?
And what is your
Wow, that-
hourly rate?
My hourly rate
Yeah.
is $250.
Really? What do you
And
do?
Mr.
Do you
McDougall
offer
had
lap
asked you
dances with
about
that?
courts
What,
that
how does that
accepted
work?
testimony from you. Has any court ever excluded you from testifying as an expert?
Yes.
No.
Yes. Huh.
That's all I have, Your Honor. I think
What?
at this point, if it's appropriate, I'd go ahead and raise an objection to the scope of what's being offered here. Our motion in limine lays out our concerns with Mr. Parikh's testimony
I'm
and
gonna.
offering
Can we see
opinions.
that one, the in
Also,
limine
his
one,
testimony
or
that
does that
he's
mean it's
only
behind?
reviewed the databases and not the software itself, hasn't touched a Dominion equipment since 2017. Mr. McDougall's expansive scope of his opinions to cover everything related to Dominion 5.5 as used in Georgia, we think is also beyond what he should be allowed to testify to.
It has.
All right, that was a
Don't
lot,
fucking mutter,
Mr. McDougall, that you
stupid
asked.
little
kind
shit.
of the
Somebody
fields of
check his hard
qualification. Let's
drive.
just nail those
Done
down.
with
It's in
these idiots.
cybersecurity, EAC requirements, encryption keys. Did I catch it all?
Certification,
Yeah,
how
right,
that relates
Carrie.
to certification, how those are used in the Dominion system.
All right, and other than what's already been raised in the motion in limine about the scope, how would you respond to these issues raised by Mr. Tyson concerning maybe how recent his
Yeah.
review has been of
And I think
data?
I might be able to address that by posing a few more questions about what his analysis of the databases entailed. If I could,
All right, and you can
with leave
renew
of
your-
court to do that.
Renew your tendering after that's done.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Parikh, can you describe what analyses you applied to the four election databases that you mentioned from Appling, Bibb, Jones, and Telfair counties?
As far as everything that I checked within the database, the
Well-
very first thing is I restored these backup databases and was successful with all of them, like all the other databases were. If I did not get the database, I got a backup copy and proved to that. Then I compared it against other state systems, which had different versioning, which had the same database structure. They had a lot of the same stored procedures, which I might add
This
are
would
way
be all
too
the
many.
voting system shit that Doug
And
Frank and
they were the
others
same
got for
functionality
him.
across different versionings.
Yeah.
I can also
Was he
state
paid
that
by
I've reviewed
Lindell for that?
Dominion correspondence that refers to how they handle software versioning, but I don't think that's in the scope of this hearing, but it's not to best practice.
Are you, in the course of your analysis of these databases, were you able to run, well, how did you examine? I mean, what did you do? What tools, what software? How did you figure out what you figured out?
I used everything that was on the voting system, which from a security perspective is atrocious because all you have to do is gain access and you're in. And as my demonstrations will show, I use the tools on the system. These tools that are on these systems
I just
would
dropped
not
a
be
link for
found
his hissy
in the
fit in the
DoD
Carrie
operational
Lake.
environment.
You've got
in
to
the
watch it
financials
if it's on there. I think it's on there.
There are
But
compilers
anyway,
on
take
there.
a look at what I dropped.
There's
It's
actual
about
where the
hit play.
database
This
resides,
douchebag
the management
in
studio.
Arizona,
These are
where he
all
testified and
worst
and
practice.
What
fucked
does
Carrie
the-
Lake, and
what
then
does
she
the
lost both
management
cases.
studio mean, and how did you use it to examine the database?
That and the command line component does. I have free access to the database. And again, they use the operating system, the Windows login credentials, which when I access the system, I entered without a password, which is easy.
Were you able to run Dominion software as a part of your analysis of these systems?
Yes, and components on the software, yes.
And how did you do that on your machine without having a Dominion machine?
As part of forensic investigations, the very
Oops.
first thing you do when you collect evidence is you create your hashes to verify the integrity of the system. You put the evidence away, you have that copy, and then you usually make another copy and you get the hashes of that because you have to have a detailed chain of custody when you're dealing with evidence. And usually to expedite forensic investigations, you want the live system to pull it up. So what I did was from one of the image files of a Dominion system, I created a virtual machine. I then easily hacked into the virtual machine.
Oh my
and once I logged
God.
in, I had access to the database. I
Help
could
me,
manipulate the
Jesus.
databases and control it.
And find out how the encryption keys were stored?
Yes, sir.
All right, sir. And do you think your testimony would help the court understand the issue of encryption keys and how they're used in the Dominion system and how that
We got
relates
Kitty,
to
maybe.
EAC certification?
Maybe.
Yes, sir. And the importance of encryption keys that they're dealing with in the XO59 certificate, specifically the XO59 certificate. It's a security certificate that's used for communications.
And were the databases that were provided to you, are they a sufficient basis for you to form a reliable opinion?
Yes, they are.
Did you apply any particular principles or methods
about
to your analysis?
Yes, I use standard testing methods and forensic steps.
And do they reliably support the opinions that you've reached here as well as in other cases?
Yes, sir, they do. As I've put my declarations under threat of perjury and submitted to the U.S. Supreme Court, I stand by 100% of what I've written.
All right, I renew my tenure, Your Honor.
You do that.
All right,
You do
based
that.
on the testimony I've heard so far and the voir dire of the witness, I do find this witness possesses information beyond the ken of the average layman.
Oh my
And
God.
that
I don't
on the
know.
databases he reviewed,
I
he
don't
has
know how to help.
relevant information to share as it relates to the issues raised here, and concerns or objections that are preserved go to their weight, not their admissibility. So you may proceed, Mr. McDougall.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Mr. Parikh, are encryption keys any part of the Dominion system used here in Georgia?
Yes, they are.
How are they used in the system here in Georgia?
They're used to encrypt some of the username passwords, which
But I
is
don't know
not
if
a
the
really
state's
very
on
good
top of this
standard. They
one.
should always use hashes, but there are also hashes that are
Yeah,
weak
he's
and
been
vulnerable.
paid by
They're left
Lindell.
unprotected.
Okay.
But they use the
Or
Raindell
whoever.
encryption
Whoever's
key
part of that. Patrick
and
Byrne.
its vector
He's probably
as
paid
their
ultimately by
private
Patrick
keys,
Byrne.
which those are supposed to be protected. Then they also use the XO59 certificate, which is used for authentication. And this establishes trust between the system components. And then there's an HMAC key that's also, and these are all stored in the same unsecure table within the database.
All right, sir. And in light of how these, well, you said you used the word Rendell.
Raindell, yes, sir.
Help the court understand what in the
Is
world
that where
is.
the hobbits or the
Rendell was
elves
there-
live?
That encryption algorithm that's used to create those keys, there were actually three
Isn't that where
people.
the
He was
elves
the
live?
main person that submitted for the keys. And it's an encryption algorithm. That's just industry standard.
And it's named after a fellow named Rendell,
Yes.
but it's spelled, it doesn't,
Raindell, yes, he's Indian.
okay. In light of how these encryption keys are used in the system, are they important to the security of the system?
They are vital to the security of the system and the integrity of the system.
If a bad actor who has a little bit of skill knows what they're doing and has access to the system,
Which is why they
and
wanted
access to the
copies of the machines,
encryption
by the
keys,
way. Do you know
is that system
That's
secure?
why they
No, it is
tried so
not.
hard to get a
Why
copy
not?
of a machine
Because they could do
because they want to know how to
anything.
hack
They
it.
can
Hello?
decrypt the configuration files, which are encrypted for the, like,
How
for
hard
example,
is
the
this?
tabulator components.
Is this
And
hard,
so I could
Merrick
make a
Garland?
tabulator. They could easily manipulate that, make it do whatever. They can decrypt the information
Nobody
coming back
looks at
to the
Lindell because he's
election
such a fucking
management system,
clown.
the
Well, guess
EMS.
what?
They could manipulate the ballot images.
He's a
They can
well-connected
manipulate
clown.
the cast vote record. They could do any number of things.
What is the cast vote record?
The cast vote record contains the data, the ballot images, but it's basically the results from the tabulator.
Under the applicable standards of the VVSG
It's
and
not
FIPS
helpful data.
140-2,
That's really what we should
how
just
should
say.
encryption
not helpful
keys
for
be
anything
stored or kept
related
or managed on the
to
Dominion system?
erection integrity.
The management and storage of encryption keys are, when they're in plain text, it's only within the cryptographic module. If they're taken outside the cryptographic module, they must be securely protected.
And is the way they are kept on the Dominion system in Georgia, does it comply with that requirement?
No, it does not. They're in an insecure operating system, information system, with hundreds of vulnerabilities. The database, and I've had database experts assist me in
They do
analysis,
not.
that
Everybody's
they are
so
not
haughty.
configured properly. They do not log properly, as I'm sure Mr. Cotton could testify to, which leads you hard to do a forensic investigation and determine cause analysis. Even a system administrator tech would be lacking information. And so there's lack of logging. The database, these encryption keys would be considered confidential. It's the same thing as like a doctor's office who has your medical PII information, or your bank that any business that deals with credit cards, for example, would have to protect the database. And you can protect the table, you can protect the row, you can encrypt the whole entire database. And that is not done. And to use the operating system's password
Hey,
and
Dominion, I got
authentication
another
to
one
get
for
into the
you. You might
database
get, I don't
is
know,
not best practice.
you might get
And
a small
again,
ranch
I did it without a
house in
password at all.
ranch style house.
And so how are the
Nashville or something, I
encryption
don't know where
keys
he
in
lives.
fact stored in these election databases?
They're in plain text, unencrypted, in an insecure database.
And so that is not the cryptographic.
That's a violation of FIPS 140-2.
Because it's not in an encrypted or cryptographic module.
That is correct.
And does that comply with the VVSG?
No, it does not.
Does that comply with the EAC certification requirements?
No, it does not. And if I can add, the VVSG, because of the way Georgia state law states, they're not voluntary now. They're now system requirements. They're standards. That standard is a requirement and should be mandatory because Georgia law states that it has to be federally certified.
And Your Honor, just to move to strike that last answer regarding the legal implications here.
All right, I don't think we actually strike anything for the record, but your objection is noted and it'll be given the weight it deserves.
Are there any particular
So we get
sections
to lie about
of
that?
the
Is that- that's
VVSG
how it
that are
works
most
now?
particularly
Okay. Hey, Cash
applicable
App, how you
to the
doing?
management of the encryption keys?
Section 7 of Volume 1 is the primary security. Security is also mentioned in sections 4 and 6, but the main ports of those
Good
deal with that.
morning. Oh,
Volume
gal.
2 also talks
Just you
about
wait.
security.
Look who
and
it is, gal.
From an operational perspective
It's
and the
Clay.
risk involved.
I got a
But Section 8
19-inch ballot on
talks
20-inch paper.
about
Parikh.
the quality, and
Three-time
and they
loser
mentioned the
Parikh.
life
They just
cycle
admitted him as
management,
an
which
expert.
means it's an operational thing, because the life
So it's
cycle of
about,
any information system
it's
is
about
from
the
birth to
latest
death,
story
and
about
therefore you have to
Dominion
patch it,
stuff
you
in
have to do
Georgia and the
security
election
updates, you have to meet all your
machines.
requirements
I got to actually
100%
look
of
into
the
the story. I'm
time.
going to
It's
be
not
honest. I
something
hadn't
where
read it yet.
I get
even.
certified and I get connected
Didn't
to the
realize this was
network,
happening
and I'm
because
good. For
nobody
example,
fucking
in my
tells
work,
you.
when
Like,
they take
none of these courts actually say, hey,
I'm sorry,
this is
I gotta
coming
pause
up.
because I got to keep this unclassified. But so
Anyway.
in the software that we develop,
I just have an
if they
issue
take
with
the
court
system off to
information.
reload the application software, there's a whole process that's done, and we have configuration management. If you related it to election system engineering change orders, and so when they get that approved, the software developers finish their job, the techs finish their job. The
And
last
yet
part
again, the
is part of the
highlight
QA
is
where
that
the
first of
security
all,
checks are
he
done, and it has
his
to be
penetration lasts
certified by the
2.5
group that I
minutes.
work in, the information security officers, before it can be
And then
reconnected to the
also-
network.
Wait, what was the other one? Happy Monday.
So that's
right?
the part about quality in the lifecycle management.
What?
All right, sir. And so the VVSG
Oh,
speaks
and
to
he reminded us that he was a temp.
life cycle compliance.
Yes,
And what part do you recall?
that's in section 8.1, if I'm not mistaken.
They
Now,
just
would there
want
be any point
to control the
to
count because
having
Steve Bannon said that
a,
years ago. It doesn't matter who
test-
votes. It matters who counts the
standards
votes.
requirement for cybersecurity that was inapplicable in the operational environment?
No, that would make no sense whatsoever.
No, that would make no sense.
So
wouldn't make no
you've had an
sense.
opportunity to examine election databases from the 4 counties.
Yeah,
How did
4
it come
counties in
about that
Georgia.
you
Good job,
examined
Clay.
those databases?
I was able to obtain them to compare them with other databases in different
And
states
how did you
that I
get
was
them,
doing
Clay?
as part of the Arizona. Um, uh, I, I don't know what it was called when it went to back to the Supreme Court, but that was my evaluation. And because based on that, the investigation and the evidence found, the Arizona Senate allowed me to get their 2020 database as well and
Oh.
discover the same inconsistencies.
Oh.
Okay. What was your understanding of how the 4 Georgia
We're
county
just handing
databases were obtained
democracy
and made
over
available
in
to
some
you?
ways.
They were given by the counties under a public's record request.
And how did you get a hold of them?
In my investigation and the other system components that I've looked at as far as
Yeah,
system
well,
log files and answering
consider
questions
what we're
on
dealing
what
with.
the log information did, because I can interpret that and give them meaning to the components. I was made aware of them and I asked for them to review them to see, because again, this is software development. This is not just specific to the state of Georgia. This pretty much, my educated guess would be, this is even outside of the versions we're
temp?
talking about. It's been demonstrated.
You're educated. I mean,
Let me
no
stop you for
dissed
just a
attempts,
second,
because man,
I think my question may not have been clear.
we've all been there.
How did
and
you
I
obtain a
love
copy
temps,
of the
actually.
election databases for these 4 counties?
But let's not
I was given
overstate.
access to
If
the
you're
voter
hired as a
GA
temp, that's a very
directory,
different thing than being
and then I downloaded them from there, and then of course
lauded
created my hash files.
All right,
expert.
sir.
Which I don't know. Maybe temps. Maybe if I was a temp, I could be an expert on something. Usually I wasn't a total expert, though.
In general terms, how do the backup databases that you obtained and then restored compare to the actual operational database used in elections?
It's the same database. It's the same exact database. The only difference between that and an operational database would be alive. If the system's up and functioning and that database is used on a daily basis, it's going to contain things. The backup database would be a snapshot in time.
All right, sir. And are
he's an
the
expert on
way the
backups.
encryption keys were found in the backup databases, is that the same as how they are stored in operational election databases?
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And so your analysis of the state, the management, storage, and nature of the encryption keys in the backup is valid for operational election databases?
Yes, it is.
Let me jump in on that
Would that
point.
be
So
a
essentially what I'm
says
hearing you
you?
say is the 4 databases that you analyzed and looked at very closely here, your opinion today is that is the same as the operating database that would be used live in an election. Is that fair to say?
Yes, sir, it is.
And how are you able to say that?
Because these are relational databases, something that I was educated in, and they're built on a structure. And the most important thing is that structure cannot change because the way Dominion implements what's called stored procedures, that's the majority of their work. And those are in the database. So you cannot change a database table.
I just got lost.
It would mess all the voting system up, because then your configuration of your tabulators would have to change. There's all different components in the voting system. If it helps to answer, in any system when they create it, and this is whether it's ES&S or Dominion, but we'll talk specifically about Dominion, they create what's called an election project. And there's certain files that get created. And one of those files in the election project is the election database. And it's based off a template, a standard in the software development that they create from, and then it's customized in the table columns are given specific names that do not change, but the
Right.
rows may change.
And then
For
come over
example,
here and then
if
pass the
there's
Dunkin'
a
Donuts
state
on your right,
election
and then
within
go over to
Georgia,
the
it will
left.
be
And
specific
then when you hit the
information
mobile
for
gas
those
station,
candidates,
you're
their
there.
party, and the way Georgia runs their election. Even if it's for anything else, if you're voting on funding, how to change state appropriations, whatever, that has to go public, anything like that, that's what changes within the database. The overall structure of the database and the procedures do not, only basically row data.
Nothing more than
right, and these four
feelings.
databases, they are a snapshot in time from when and what time period exactly?
Were from after the election. A couple of them are recounts.
Which election?
The 2020 elections.
2020 general November election,
Yes, sir.
or is it also the runoff?
There are two that are recounts, so would have been after the general election.
So not the
But
runoff,
bottom line,
the recounts.
you're testifying that with confidence, the databases you saw relating to that election are still the ones in operation today, or are they still ones being used, and they weren't changed in any way in the open records disclosure process?
They're the exact same. They're a backup of that
How do
operational.
you know
If-
that?
For example, you have two options, sir, if you want to see that.
No.
You bring in an
How
election
do
management
you
system,
know
which has
that?
the database on it. We can quickly do a query. It takes no time at
How
all.
do
And you
you
can see
know
structurally
this?
that it's the same as what I examined. Or there would be engineering change orders or a software update that say that they changed the database structure. And I can tell you for a fact that there's no such engineering change order for Dominion systems. I've looked at every one of them.
All right, Mr. McDougal.
Look
Thank
at
you, Your
that
Honor.
blinky.
So let me try a short
movement.
version of the questions that the court was asking. How do you know that the way the encryption keys are set up in the backup database is the same as they are in the operational database?
Because the backup database
No,
is the
that wasn't his
operational
question. His
database.
question was,
All right, sorry.
It's
have you
just a
seen it
snapshot.
anything since 2020?
Now,
How do
is
you
there
know?
some way for you to tell if the backup election databases that you examined are
Clay's
authentic?
lying because his face is getting really tense.
Yes, sir.
What is that method?
That's by what was provided from the counties and verifying the hash. And there's also SHA files that are part of the system when it's created. And I can compare those SHAs to what I create and see that it was unchanged.
What?
All right, for the benefit of the
What?
court, what is a SHA file?
What
A
the
SHA
fuck?
file is a
I don't
hashing
get it.
algorithm. It's
What is
basically the
happening?
fingerprint. It's the identity of the file. In file integrity, you have
What is
these
happening?
SHAs hashes. And there's MD5 hash, there's SHA-1, which is used by the voting systems, there's SHA-512 or 256 and
This country is so
SHA-512.
fucked.
The tool I
I
use
just
creates
can't
all
even.
those because I like to cover the
This
bases
country
because you
is
never
so
know what you might
fucked.
deal with.
Nobody's
So
been
how
paying
do-
attention to these guys. Nobody.
SHA, it's an
No
acronym.
fucking
Sorry.
buddy.
What does it stand
Okay.
for?
Oh, it's a secure hashing
Meanwhile, Lindell
algorithm.
did
If I'm
all the
not
dirty
mistaken.
work on his own dime for everybody
That
to
would be
get
the
this
one
machine
instance I
data.
might have a leg up on him. All right. So how does a hash value have any utility in authenticating a digital file?
It's the fingerprint. It's a one-way algorithm that it's a bit by bit binary operation that covers the file itself. In systems, and I've even read it in technical data packages of vendors, they recommend using a file integrity system. In the Department of Defense, we have them all the time. And an application does it. And
Isn't
on
that
your
from a
critical
song?
portions of the operating system, you would create these SHA files, these hash files, and it's the fingerprint, so you know file integrity. And part of the application thing is it monitors the system. If it and it's constantly checking the hashes of the system. And so, for example, if a critical application on a server is changed or modified,
Yeah,
that
right?
will
That's from Good
flag it,
Country,
and
I
you will
think.
get a warning
Pretty
in a
sure. Good song.
console. And this,
So I'm trying to understand the concept. Are you comparing the hashes at different times? And I mean, how do you use them to figure it out?
when the file is generated,
Exactly.
for example, in the public record request or when the system creates them, they create that SHA-1 file. And in the SHA file is the fingerprint of that file at the time that they exported it.
And so how, if you do, how do you use that to determine whether what you looked at was authentic?
You create the SHA yourself independently from what they provided you and you
What?
compare them.
And if they match, what does it tell you?
That tells you that you have the file at untouched. It's exactly as they gave it to you.
And if they don't match, what does that tell you?
That it's been manipulated.
And is,
What?
so you've said this, but I'm
It's
going to
always
ask
like a
it a
new
different
layer
way.
of data coming in, right?
Is
Like always something little
comparison
new
of hash
thrown in at the end.
values an accepted method in the cybersecurity world for verifying the authenticity of a digital record?
Yes, it is.
In this case, were there hash values associated with the production by these 4 counties?
Yes, there were.
And did you carry out the process that you just described to compare hash values?
Yes, I compared the hash on the compressed files that I got,
Oh,
and
I
they
wish I had
matched.
some
Then
now.
specifically
Yeah,
on the
MD5. I wonder
databases
how he pronounces
and those,
MD5.
because I was going to
Medifub.
restore them, I
Medifub.
checked that SHA file,
That'd be the
And what
Medifub,
did you
sir.
find?
that it matched.
And therefore the what?
The databases are the operational databases.
All right, sir.
I don't know, Carrie. This is the one so
Do you
far.
have copies
The
of
other
the
one was a
file? Did I ask you to
GOP
make flash
Georgia
drives
woman who
of
is
the
inner fields.
files that you got?
Yes, sir, you did.
All right.
I
I
like to
have
start my
those
day with
on
hash
flash
values.
drives.
Hell yeah. I like that. That's a great
actually
idea.
do not have a flash drive for opposing counsel, but I can make that available to them by the end of the day. And what I would like to do
Just
is
like
tender
sharing
those-
machine data
show
everywhere. Is
them
that
the
what we're doing
witness.
now? Is that where we're
If I
at?
may approach the witness, Your Honor.
Oh my God.
Mr. Parikh, can you identify these
Best
flash drives?
part of waking
Yes,
up
these are the
is
4 flash
hashing
drives
your-
that I put the
no.
hash file that I created to do verification along with the compressed files. And then on the same exact media, I decompressed the files per your request. So if they wanted to
best
look at the
part of
individual pieces
waking
of
up
those
is
compressed
hash to
files
fuck
along with the
you
SHA
up.
values.
I'm sorry.
So that's what's on
rhymes
here.
with up?
They were brand new drives from
Well, it has to be
Staples
up.
purchased. So there was
Mud.
open package. That was what was done. They were removed label, and I've kept control of these the whole
I
time.
spent a week
All right,
there
and
one night.
You made those at my request?
Yes, sir.
All
Good
right,
one, Jim.
And I would like to assign those exhibit numbers 25, 26, 27, and 28. But they
McAfee's
do
really
not have
getting on my
exhibit labels on them,
nerves.
Your Honor. They do have the county label. And so if we could ask the court reporter to put an exhibit
Dare I
label on
start joint number
at an
3?
appropriate moment.
Dare
All
I?
right, Mr. Tyson, so I know
I
we can
dare.
have your conditional thoughts on the admissibility of these,
I dare.
so you can have a chance to
I
actually
worked
look
really
at them.
hard to make
But
6
assuming they
joints
do
last
contain what
night.
the witness says, I guess one I would wonder is, are these some kind of sensitive materials we have to handle in a
His
specific way? And also,
morning
if you have any other general objection.
skin.
So, Your Honor, I don't believe there are any
Yeah,
sensitivities around that.
true.
They were produced already in open records
Gotta invoke
requests,
the
and they're kind of
hash.
out there already. And then I think aside from us getting a copy, then that's the only thing we would have, and just make sure we have that, but no objection otherwise.
All right, so those will be conditionally admitted. We can
Okay,
re-raise
well,
it
why
if
don't we just hand over the
you look at the
machines?
copy
In
and it
fact, you
doesn't
know
turn out to
what?
be what you
I
thought it
think
was. So,
Lindell's right.
Mr.
Why don't
McDougal,
we
if you
just
could
agree
provide
with
that
Mike
at some
Lindell?
point, maybe
How
over
about
the lunch
that?
break.
Why don't we just make
You-
this easy
Your
on
Honor,
ourselves?
Could I get some water? Thank you.
don't have
You
to
know
ask
what
if it's your
Madeleine
witness.
Albright said a long time ago? She said, you know,
Well,
over
it's a personal
history,
one.
dictators don't take power.
Depending on what the
They're voted
court's
in.
pleasure was. Um,
Whoa,
So,
Gulpy
Mr.
McGulperson.
Parikh, what, if anything, did you do to check on the encryption keys in these databases?
I did a general preliminary query across the database and to look for anything encryption key. It first identified the tables in the Georgia databases.
I think so.
Well, a couple of them were large, but still no more than a couple of minutes to do that. Once I identified those tables, I went to those tables. I just did the basic request that's already pre-programmed in the SQL database to look at the top 1,000 rows.
You mean
and
the
within-
Hold
sequel?
on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's
okay.
the SQL database?
The SQL database is the
you know, what
relational
you called
database that's
SQL?
used by the Dominion system. And it's a relational database that uses SQL commands, the SQL commands, in order to execute views and search functions. It's a way to organize your data, and
Okay.
hopefully that's clear.
And SQL is pronounced SQL in the business.
Yes, yes, it is. Sorry for
And
that.
that's
Yeah.
okay. And are SQL databases common in the world of computers?
Yes, they are.
And what does SQL stand for?
It's a querying language.
I got another one on you. Is it
Yes.
structured query language?
Yeah, structured query. Thank you.
Okay.
I couldn't remember structured.
All right.
Because,
I
you
will
know,
look dumb later on, Your
Temp.
Honor. Okay, so what did you, and you did the same approach for all four of these databases?
you make it yourself.
And other states' databases as well.
And
I don't
so
know,
how did you
Teresa.
retrieve, what did you do to retrieve
I
or
feel like
examine
I'm
the,
just about worn
encryption keys?
out on this one. I feel like
It's
I've
easily,
I
you can
started too
export
early on the
that
election
query
integrity bullshit.
from the database itself and get all the keys, or you can copy and paste. It's fairly easy to get them out.
So there's some kind of command you enter and it shows you the encryption keys?
Right, that query of the
Oh,
top
really?
1,000 rows
Really? It's
for a
that easy?
specific
Wow.
table election event.
Amazing that
it's
we've
only
had
one
any
row,
elections,
and
really.
it identifies the election, the time of the election, the county, what type of election, and then it has those keys.
And what is the state in which those keys are displayed? Encrypted?
No, sir, they are unencrypted, plain text.
And plain text in your world means unencrypted.
Yes, sir.
That means you and I could read them.
In encryption, there's plain text and then there's the encrypted text.
Okay. And as a cybersecurity professional, how would you characterize that method of storing encryption keys?
It's
Well, you can tell by the
egregious
smile on
in
my
general
face that I don't think
terms,
it's very
and-
good.
And I work in the cybersecurity realm, and I work with gentlemen who've got a year, 2 years experience, and then some who have as much as I do. And I just say, hey, what would you think about if the secret
Hey, y'all.
encryption key
What do you
was stored in
think?
a database in plain text? And the very first thing you say, well, was the database encrypted? And I'm like, no. Well, how did you authenticate to the database? Well, I use the operating system, and they're just like, their minds are blown.
So
Oh, really? What does that look like?
what does it mean for the security of the system that the encryption keys are stored in plain text in the election database?
There is no security. For what little that you could claim as security is irrelevant. What's more important than the security is the integrity of the system. There is no integrity because you have to understand that these keys are vital to the security and the integrity of the system. This is how you validate that it's secure, that the data cannot be tampered with. That, along with the logging, which doesn't exist, there's not appropriate logging on these systems to even track the actions done.
If a bad actor
From Serbia?
got a hold of these encryption keys, what could they do?
They could change the configuration settings on the components. They could manipulate. They could create election data and encrypt it and make it seem
Here we
legitimate
go.
when the system takes it in and evaluates it.
Here we go.
You know, there's the saying, 1,000 ways to skin this cat. There's about 2,000 ways to skin this with those keys.
And would such changes or such actions be detectable on these systems?
No, they would
Can't be
not.
that,
And
Captain.
as in Dr. Haldeman's, no, they would not be detectable. And Dr. Haldeman, in his report, refers to this because when people ask, is there any evidence of hacking? Well, one, two, nothing against Dr. Haldeman, but he was not requested to do a forensic investigation of the system. So when he makes that statement,
Here we go.
it's
He's getting
not
a little
exactly accurate.
angsty,
He
little
is a
emo.
security professional. I admire his capabilities, but he himself states when you hack these type of systems and the techniques he used would be undetectable. And I can verify that. When I did threat system stuff for the Department of Defense and we played bad guy, we would have to leave little safe files somewhere to prove because they would swear up and down that we were not there. We'd give them directory, go look here, and it would say, guess who was here, or Waldo, or something silly like that.
Kilroy was here.
Yes.
All right. If you would, in the binder, turn to tab 21, and there's a document there marked Exhibit 21. Can you tell the court what that is?
It's a security analysis of Georgia's ImageCast X ballot marking devices.
That is
And it's the redacted version of Dr. Haldeman, which, for the record, its redactions were meaningless to me and some of the other technical people that I spoke with because for a tech person, it's not redacted.
Right, in other words, you already knew.
The majority of regular people, yes.
All right. Now, have you prepared any demonstration of that would illustrate your testimony?
Yes, sir, I have.
And do you have your computer up there with you?
No, sir, it's back there. I didn't know whether I could bring it without permission for.
While you're doing that, Mr. McDougall, you tender in Exhibit 21 for the record as well?
Actually, I think I would like to, but I don't have a witness to swear that it's, it's an exhibit in another case. I don't have Dr. Halderman.
Funny,
So I'm
it's
not
giving
sure I
me
can
more Van
authenticate.
by the
So,
River vibes.
But I was going to let it be a document that the expert relied on. That was my intention, but if council would like to put it in, I'm certainly happy to have it in.
Any preference, Mr. Tyson?
And Your Honor, we would object to it coming in. I think it contains a lot of opinions. Dr. Haldeman was subject to several days of cross-examination
Yeah.
on it at the curling trial.
All right,
I think that's
understood.
fair. That was my thinking on it.
All right, well, thanks for that clarification. Let me do a follow-up here as well. So the statement that, if a bad actor obtained keys, it would lead to these severe consequences. Just want to be clear, we're not talking about the keys necessarily that you had and as a result of the open records request. We're saying that as you believe they're currently stored, however they're out there now. Is that?
Yes,
what you're
sir.
saying?
Yes, sir. And it's one of the demonstrations I will do. Will show you there are common passwords. There are passwords that have been used for an extremely long time. The same passwords I saw in the voting system test labs reside on the Georgia voting systems. And that's an egregious violation of password management,
What?
credential management. So,
All right, and before I forget it, I'll have a helpful note from Mr. Olson. Just as I was anticipating, is it X509 or X059?
Would that
X509.
be Kurt Olson
I
that he
think
just
earlier you said
mentioned?
X059.
What the
I
fuck?
apologize.
Okay. And is the X509 considered an encryption key?
It's considered a security certificate. It's a way of identifying and trusting a system. For example, if you go to Amazon or any of the web services, your computer or your phone, because your phone is nothing but a computer, it's going to connect with their server, and there has to be a trust relationship built, and that's done via the certificate. And with these certificates, a lot of times you really don't have to authenticate with a username and password. It depends on how the system's built.
And have you made any findings about the X509 certificates across the election databases that you have examined?
Yes, I have.
And what have you found?
They're the same.
And how would you characterize that in terms of cybersecurity?
That's an egregious violation. And the fact that they're 10 years, they're allowed to exist for 10 years, means that they could easily be reused in election systems year after year if they're not changed or updated.
And so, as an example, on a local area network, what role does an X509 certificate play?
It would allow the system to trust the other system that has that certificate.
And so the system that is thereby trusted can do what with the other system?
It can communicate and access it, exchange communication, do whatever communications need to be done.
Grab a drink after work.
And another thing
the
about the
usual.
certificates, because I've had them created, it's easy to do. They are not password protected. In other words, when I install the certificate, there's no password or PIN required to install them. And that's usually a security option that you do when you create a
I
certificate.
just want to know the state really
that once you
prepared for
import-
this.
So that way
okay?
you know
I just
it's an
want to know
authorized
that.
user that installed their certificate on the system.
All right, Your Honor, at this point, I would like to move into the demonstrations, but Mr. Parikh needs a minute to set up, and we've been at it for a little over 2 hours. So may I suggest humbly that we take a short break?
All right, yeah, let's take 5, and when we come back, we can pick that up and go from there. Mr. Tyson, do you have any idea? I know we've still got some ground to cover here, but how long you're going to need for a cross?
I'm thinking I can do that in 45 minutes.
All right, we may end up wanting to break for lunch at the outset or maybe halfway through. Let's see where we get. All right, we'll be back in 5.
Okay, calm down, Scott. Calm down, Scott. Okay. Wow. All right. Well, good morning.
And please,
Oops.
if you, for the acronym, other court, that just spoke it to me, said, could you, yeah. I'm sorry, sometimes I get too nerdy.
No, thank you.
What? Are we having a little chitty chat with the court recorder? Court reporter? I just want to see if anybody says anything or burps or anything like that. All right, no, let's just move along. Let's keep it business, okay? Let's keep this business. All right, anyway, I'm going to quiet them down. Well, maybe I won't. I'll just leave it. So that is, what an interesting morning. What an interesting morning it's been. So good morning. Welcome to everyone who's made it in. Lovely to see you. Hope you had a good weekend. Mine was whatever. It was just kind of bleh, bleh. I listened to a lot of music this weekend, which I highly recommend. Music is really reminding me that there is such a world beyond, social media. So I've been trying to really focus into music and just getting inspired and, thinking about that. I know. Don't they clear the court? Apparently not. It's only 5 minutes. It's really him setting up his shit.
So where's the connection?
But so I had a pretty good weekend. I hope everybody else did. I was really proud of myself, and it was a post. I stayed up too late. Well, that's first of all. I stayed up too late. Morning, Paul J. How are you? So I stayed up too late, but that's fine because what I did was I made myself roll a bunch of joints all at once and not smoke one until this morning.
Are we breaking for lunch?
And now I've basically smoked 2.5. But that's not the point. The point is, whoa, Clay, back it up, baby. That was kind of a shuddering. Anyway, I was really super proud of myself. I took all the cones that I had left and I stuffed them full of nice, juicy, sticky weed at 33.7% THC because that's how this girl rolls. And now I'm all flower, no more vape. I've actually completely cut off vape and I'm only smoking flower, which actually I really prefer. There's something weird about inhaling like oils and I didn't like it. And I think I can't see how it wouldn't be really bad for you. Not that smoking is whatever. But my point is that I'm really enjoying the flower so much more. So highly recommend if you want to kind of break the vape habit. I do recommend it. It's much more thoughtful process. I don't know. And it's much more, I don't know. It's kind of like, I don't know. It's just more intentional. And it takes a little bit of time. You know what I mean? And I don't know. It feels like a little less.
Yeah, this shows
like
it.
So inhaling
everybody.
oil.
That means they can.
So anyway,
put it up on the
that's my TED Talk / commercial for flour.
And we're just going to do
Which we have a picture of some flour now.
Right. And if
right
you'd like
in
to
the
take
corner.
a restroom break, this would be a good time.
Right there, right down there.
I know.
We have
I'll
a
be
flower.
reminded that
So that's our new. Harder to get over 100% THC with flour. Yeah, But at the same time, I don't know. I enjoy the high much better with flour than I did with vape. Vape didn't really feel like anything to me. It didn't really seem to get me high at all, really. And I just thought, well, it doesn't feel right. You lose terpenes with concentrate. Oh, yeah, that would make sense, right, Paul J? I mean, I'm not an expert on weed whatsoever. I'm really late to the game. But I'm at a point where I can imbibe, I may enjoy. I can imbibe, I may enjoy. So I am. Like a fiend. Yeah, but I really enjoy it. I really like it. And eventually I'll have a little place where I can grow some of my own. Yeah, that's why it's different. Oh, I like it a lot. I like it so much better. It just feels calmer, I guess. I don't know. And probably some of the lesser cannabinoids. I don't know. I so don't understand like all the chemistry. Would it be chemistry behind that? Physiology? What would that categorize as? Anyway. So yeah, good morning. Oh my goodness. I really don't want to leave, but I do have to like do a couple of things around the house. But what I'll do is if I botany, is that botany? Is that botany? Well, the physiology of the plant itself is what I guess I'm referring to, which is what are the components of the plant that make it, I'm a little high, but what are the components of the plant that make it so make one strain different than the other? You know what I mean? I don't understand all of those things. I'm like the dope that looks for, oh, what's the highest number? Okay, that one. I'm a simple lady. I'm a simple lady. Low maintenance. I always just if I walk into the weed shop, it's like, what's your highest THC? Let's just cut to the chase. And I don't know. That's always worked for me. I do both, and I have some Rick Simpson oil. Oh, I've never tried those. I never tried that. But yeah, no, I'm just enjoying it. It just feels a little more hippie dippy, and I like that because I think I'm just a big hippie at heart, frankly. And I spent the weekend mourning Chris Christopherson because I don't know, Chris Christopherson just really hit me as a kid. My dad listened to him and really introduced me to him and Johnny Cash and Willie Nelson and Waylon Jennings and all these different amazing players. And so that music just means a whole fucking lot to me as a person. And I really, it really hit me that he passed yesterday. Because I felt like, he had his troubles, certainly. But he just was always true to himself. And his songs were so incredibly, God, they just evoked such feelings of romantic love. Like he told you through his songs how deeply he loved you. That's what really struck me. And his voice to me was one of those unique, one of a kind voices, like a Dylan, or Waits. But it was just beautiful, and it was so tender and so rough at the same time, right? So I really, and don't even get me started on Rita Coolidge. Rita Coolidge has one of the finest voices in the world, bar none. Oh, look at Sammy. Oh, no, that's Gus. Oh, I don't even know my own cats. Gus, go lay down. Don't show your behind, because I know it's really probably not. It needs to be cleaned. Anyway, I'm sorry about that. I didn't mean to scare him. Hi, Jay Rance. How are you? So I highly recommend if you, because they were together romantically and musically for many years. So I highly recommend checking out YouTube for Rita Coolidge with Chris Christopherson, or even just Rita Coolidge on her own. The clarity of her voice, the vocal clarity moves me. Like it moves your soul. It's one of those voices. So I really highly recommend getting either introduced or reintroduced to Rita Coolidge as a vocalist. Oof, so fucking good. We just have so many people who kind of maybe not be in the current zeitgeist or their voices, and it's kind of sad to me sometimes because they were so influential.
I tried to camouflage. I got this when I donated money to the Marine
probably
Corps
just a little
Museum,
too
and
high.
they gave you a little tech.
Anyway, good
I've had it for a
morning.
while. When were you?
Jay Rance, I'm 2.5 joints in. I rolled myself 6 joints last night, and I'm 2.5 in.
I was in an
Feeling
88,
good,
92.
feeling feisty. I am going to have to leave probably in about at least 2 hours, maybe a little less, maybe an hour and a half. But if this case is still going on, I will just keep this running. So the broadcast will not end. I may be off camera for extended periods, but the broadcast will continue. Just so you know. Because I don't want anyone to miss this. I didn't realize this was happening. This is about
Mr. McDougall, are you on Zoom yet?
Smoke
Mr.
2 joints
McDougall?
by Sublime
McDougall,
always makes me
are you
smile.
on Zoom with co-hosts so we can get you pulled
how
up?
about 2.5?
Pardon me?
Hey, we got you on Zoom, so you can pull up
Oh,
your
here we go.
video.
Now we're back. So Clay Parikh, to bring you up to speed,
All right, we need to get him on Zoom
Clay
then, right?
Parikh has been
have he's got
admitted
a
as an
link?
expert in this trial about Georgia election machines.
It's showing here.
And because they're being
I don't-
challenged, I guess. We'll find out more about it because I haven't
haven't
really
done
read
that
up
way
on this
before.
yet, believe it or not.
If you think you're on it and you can try it, you can give it a shot. Otherwise, it creates a lot of audio issues
So
because it
what
starts echoing. And
what we're
Well,
doing, what we're
I'm just
discussing
gonna
here
use
is Clay
video, sir.
Parikh is,
Oh, it's just video?
three-time loser.
With no
Just talked
audio?
about
We'll see if you can do it.
penetration
I
for
don't know.
2.5 minutes. You have to roll back because that's clippable
Would
shit.
that go out to the,
And
it should, because
folks watching?
then, so
if he's
now
able to
he's been
share his
admitted as an
screen here.
expert. I don't think the state
got
has
it up on
actually
that
caught up
monitor.
with who the characters
Yeah.
are
So
in
there
this
might be
particular
some
circus
sort
or
of one of
American
y'all
Horror
can flip
Story.
to get it
Because
on the
that's
rest of
going to be
the-
the equipment.
That's what I think is
I don't know if-
happening. Is
like,
that
we've not done it that
I'm
way
so
before.
far I'm
But
a
I
little
can actually run the
disappointed
virtual
in the
machines,
state's
too.
preparedness for this clown
let's do
show
that.
that they're
I would
trying to
send him the Zoom
entertain.
link. have him
Can't wait
watch
till
it.
Garland gets on the stand.
Just because it's untested, so we don't know
So-
if that'll work.
Yeah, that's where we are.
And then we
Yeah.
gotta, and then
Oh,
let
wait,
us.
I've got to get
Yeah.
connected to the internet.
Sorry.
So it's Fulton County Public Wi-Fi.
So I'm pretty much
Forward that email to me?
I don't
I
know.
did.
Yeah,
I
okay.
feel like I feel like I've been screaming about these clowns for
I'm trying to keep
years, and
this
here we
on
are, and now they're experts.
Yeah, now
You know, well, I'm,
What happened? Why didn't anyone? Why doesn't the DOJ do something about these clowns? The ones who are actually probably
We'll wait.
feloniously
We won't go back on the record. till we
sharing
get this figured out.
disinformation about election systems
redirected, not
and
work.
hacking
Is this
into
selfie time
fucking
here? Wait.
machines. Ask him where he got the copies of the 2020 machines.
Yeah, I know. You lose the.
I don't
you
know
lose
if those
the
were
back and
part
forth,
of
the
his
back and
open
forth.
records
Okay.
request,
All right.
but I want to
Go
know
back
who
to
else is
Wi-Fi.
involved in him.
Okay.
I want to know who's paying him.
Oh, this is bad.
Ask him who.
I don't know you're in such
Yeah, so
a
I'm gonna
precarious
drop my
It is
profession.
like
in.
Groundhog Day,
That she needs
Carrie. You're
proof of
so
life.
right. I know all of us have really
government
seen this.
already
It's
had
not.
it, I guess.
It's not breaking news.
I'm just, I
And
try
yet
to keep this one safe.
people treat this dipshit like he's a member
No,
of
there is
polite
no
society.
cleaning. You guys don't know that, hey, you put the system in a shredder. I'm just, especially if it's our guy.
Oh, see, here we
In the
go.
middle of the road. That part, okay.
My grandpa died for nothing. I said that to my husband. And he was like,
I can't. These guys are such clowns. It is. It's just so. It's so maddening. Meanwhile, shiny object, shiny object, shiny object, shiny object, shiny
Mr.
object.
McDougal.
Never
Mr.
mind that
McDougal.
they've had their hands on machines for a few years now.
Yes.
Yeah, they're coming back from a break. No, unfortunately, it started about 2 hours ago. And I hope it's going to continue so that we get deeper into who's on the witness list here.
That's the pass.
But now Clay Parikh is supposed to do his presentation of how easy it is to hack
I think
into a
that's probably gonna be
machine.
the passcode.
So get ready.
That's probably
Hold on to your
passcode. I don't-
underpants,
I've
girl.
never seen a meeting. I didn't know it.
Sweet, Jim.
You know that.
I've been
the
compared
meeting
to
ID?
longshoremen. Huh.
Just click the link on there.
It is a QAnon
okay,
here.
okay.
But now they're experts
I can make it a little bigger.
in election equipment, in cybersecurity.
5, 9, 4, 11.
Sorry, I keep expecting them to start. Oops, sorry. I just keep doing this the wrong way.
Oh, wait, what's password?
269,
Try this.
940.
This is probably the problem.
Here's a
Um,
different nibble.
Yeah, so yeah,
Alright,
I don't
there we
know.
go.
I don't know,
Zoom.
you guys.
Oh, yes?
Looks like it.
And then I'll
I
just
feel
share
like bringing
screen.
out all. I mean, I know I say this, but I'm like, I got to sit down with
Okay.
that
And then
fucking
can you
Google
share a
Drive and go
screen?
through all my clips
So
of
you
these
gotta
mute this, what
clown
I'm talking
show
about.
participants. I mean, this story's been told by multiple people.
Well, not the mic, the laptop itself.
Even like Doug Frank
Yeah.
went through all the articles
see-
about him and the clown show that had been written. The New Yorker, New York Times, LA Times. None of this is a secret.
And yet I heard Doug Frank radicalizing some already radicalized people to fight their election officials, to sue their election officials by claiming fraud. Because, hey, good news, everybody. Even though they don't control it, they are responsible. That's what he said. That's what he said. I don't know, Carrie. It's
All right, can you
almost
try
like,
pulling it up? And
I
you gotta
don't
mute your laptop.
know. I don't know. I think Lindell became the noise. And ha ha, he's so funny and he's on Jimmy Kimmel and everything's funny. Ha ha. And nobody took him seriously. Meanwhile, he
Hang
was
on.
just the cash
You still
cow
need to mute your
for
laptop.
Mike Flynn, Patrick Byrne, probably Roger Stone. I don't know. My God. This is like, not yet. Not yet easily. There will be. I just, this is really,
Better?
All right, testing.
anyway.
Yeah, I can
All
see
right.
if you can share your screen.
I'm just tired of talking about this. I want fucking Merrick Garland to do the fuck something about it.
All right. All right, let's go back on the record. We're going to go for about another hour here.
All right.
See where we end up. Mr. McDougall.
All right, thank you. And before we play these demonstrations, I had a couple of additional questions for you. Do you have an opinion on whether the Dominion system that is currently in use in Georgia has the same vulnerabilities as these systems that you examined?
Yeah, yes, sir, I do.
And what is that opinion?
That it is exactly the same. And the reason I say that is because I've reviewed every engineering change order that, more than just Dominion, but every one that Dominion's ever submitted through the EAC, because the change of the database structure would require an engineering change order because you basically have to change it across all the software versions that are distributed.
And if
you mean as part of a trusted build
had been changed so as to store the encryption keys
I don't understand what's happening here.
Or in a cryptographic module, would that require a
I hope
version number
the state
change?
has an expert on Dominion machines.
Yes, it would, because you're structurally changing that. But as I do not work in a voting system test labs, I can't state that. Here's what I will tell you. The voting system test labs, from a technical perspective, keep things what's called de minimis, which means a minor change, so no version change is done. But the fact that not even an engineering change order has been submitted, it's to me evidence that the systems are still unencrypted.
And if there had been a change made to encrypt the encryption keys or store them in a cryptographic module, is that the kind of change that would require submission of an engineering change order?
Yes, it would.
And you have checked.
After the show, I'll get some information about this case and post links in the description.
I want to state
check a little
that
bit
while
later on
technically
today for that,
that will make it compliant with FIPS 140-2 and storage and management of the encryption keys, what it will not do is still mean that they cannot be obtained and decrypted, because the massive amounts of vulnerabilities on this system, the poor configuration of the database in itself, even if you encrypted that database, somebody mid-level could take over.
All right, sir.
How?
And now, did I ask
how would that happen?
To prepare a
sir?
demonstration of the topics of your testimony?
Yes, sir, you did.
And did you record that in a video?
Yes, sir. I always record. I did when I brought the larger laptop because I was going to pull up the virtual machines and do it live. But considering especially network connectivity and stuff for some of the password things, you always back up and record it. Ask anybody who's briefed at DEF CON or Black Hat.
All right. And Your Honor, I propose to have Mr. Parikh play the video recordings of his demonstrations and narrate them as he goes.
All right. Is this also something you're tendering this demonstrative for the record?
Well, since it's a demonstrative, I wasn't planning to tender it, and I do not have the videos on a flash drive, but I can certainly have that delivered to everybody.
All right, any preference, Mr. Tyson?
I don't think, since it's just a demonstrative, I don't think it needs to come into the record. I think it's fine to play them and he can ask questions about them. I'm fine with that.
All right, I know maybe not need to, but if there's maybe a preference for completeness of the record, or since we'd be referring to things that aren't reflected in the exhibits, or is this all just going to be?
Well, these are illustrations of his testimony that reflect what he's talked about, and so they're demonstratives, 100% demonstrative evidence. So, that's why I didn't prepare flash drives to tender.
All right, well, if there's no, request by the parties, then.
I'll put a flag in that, and I may bring them in, because it will complete the record, and they are illustrative. All right, so Mr. Parikh, what is the first one that we're going to look at?
The first one deals with a common hash that's been known and still being used, one that I saw in the lab. And so before we start it, I want to explain in brief exactly what's going on. Just let me downsize this. Well, it won't. All right, so I was trying to clear the screen so everyone can see. All right, so what we have here is on the left is the SQL database. Oh wait, it started to play, I'm sorry. All right, let's go back. So I want to explain everything. This is the SQL database. This is a DVS system of access. As you can see, it's Appling database, and we're going to go down into a table, which is called app user.
And on this, what you're showing is in the Microsoft SQL Studio.
Yes, sir. This is the tool. That's exactly what we're looking at. If you could see, it says Microsoft SQL Server Management Studio. That's just how I access the database. And it is on the system, technically, when it shouldn't be.
Avert your eyes.
Then on the right is a website. It's called hashes.com. This is publicly available. You can go there and use it. So what we're going to do, I'll let it run here. We're going to go down to the app user table. We're going to select the top 100 rows, that same default query. Now, what I want to pull out, and I'm going to pause it right here, is these accounts, and you'll see, and I'll highlight over it with a mouse. There are certain accounts in here, if you notice, they have this 0x, which is irrelevant to the key. It's just this way of storage for them. And they start 6166 alpha. Notice that those are all the same. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you those. I'm going to select one of them and copy.
Pick a card, any card. Pick a card. Come on, pick a card, any card.
Out of the database. I'm going to paste it over here. Remove that front portion because that's not part of the
All right, so let's pause for just a second, okay? These passwords, are they encrypted or hashed, or what are they?
These are hashed passwords.
Which means what? Is it encrypted?
They have a one-way. Normally in an operating system, specifically Windows, when you put your password in, and it's like, Windows does not actually store the password, unlike these Dominion database systems. They actually store the hash. So when you put in the password, and it's a one-way algorithm, not supposed to be able to decrypt it if it's done appropriately.
Yeah,
and
this
even
is so this database
Microsoft
is
Windows,
an evidentiary. Yeah,
they
from an expert.
protect these, and Linux, a different operating system, protects them in a different manner. They're different files, but those storage places for them are kept secure from a normal user.
This isn't real.
You don't normally see those unless you break into the system.
It's not real.
And the reason that is because if you decrypt this hash, then you will see the password.
Boy.
And so when you log into the system, you log in with your credentials, it automatically creates a hash. And all it does is compare hashes. And there's still a hash and a whole bunch of other things I could get into on just this alone. But
so you've pasted.
Oh, I bet there is.
Hash.
I bet there is, Clay.
On an internet site, yes.
Okay, carry on then.
And so the internet site, of course, requires a little bit of security so they know they're not getting a bot. And so we log in, and then as you can see, there's the hash, and at the end is the DVS Core 08 exclamation point.
Well, what is that?
That is a password that's been around for about, I do want to show one thing in perspective of this. excuse me,
Getting
a little
nervous?
water. But
Getting a little nervous
this
there, Clay?
is a deficiency report
show
from
your
Wiley
homework, gotta
Labs
show
from
your
back in
work, do ya?
2010. And
Show
this
your long
was reported, and
division?
as you can see in there, that DVS Corp 08. And again, this report that I grabbed is from the EAC site, another publicly accessible site. So this password has been around. This report was from 2010. This is Dominion's. They're not the only vendor that hard-coded passwords, which from a software development thing is a critical sin. Anybody who's properly educated in computer science and software programming knows you do not do this. And so this was one of the major findings, and you can see that it's still in use.
All right, so going back to your.
Your Honor, if I could, just since we're now referring to a different document, I feel like where that's out of demonstrative territory, I feel we should mark that at least. I think he's testified as to what it was, but.
I think that's fair. I don't actually have it to mark or tender, but I can cure that, maybe not today because I'm not near a printer, but I will file it with I'll submit it with a notice of filing this evening.
All right, well, you potentially could also just email it to our court reporter, and as long as we're looking at the same
Okay.
PDF, we can have it noted as, is that going to be what, Exhibit 26?
All right, sir.
Is it Exhibit 26?
It would be, sorry, I'm going to go to my exhibit list.
Yeah.
It's going to be 31.
31, okay. And so if this particular document is marked as Exhibit 31, I don't know if he's identified it enough for you, but is there an objection to this being tendered as Exhibit 31 later through email and digital version?
Not to that method, Your Honor.
Would
And
you
I
like?
would just pose a relevance objection, but I know it's a low standard, so.
Okay,
yeah.
all right. So
I'm
over that
sorry.
objection then.
So I can provide the full report title if
Kamala doesn't even
it's
know.
it's Wiley Deficiency Report.
Says the guy who
It's
doesn't know what I'm
T57381
Says the guy who worries about
01.
pronouns.
That's
All right, so Mr. McDougall, you're going to complete the record for us, and now we can proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Going back to your demo, can you get back to where you were?
back in the DVS court or
Yes,
to the
yes.
next? Okay.
All right, so towards the end, where the DVS Corp 08 exclamation point was visible. And so the result of the calculation performed on this public website on the hash reveals that the password is DVS Corp 08 exclamation point.
Yes, sir.
And that's been a hard-coded password on the system since at least 2010.
What's more importantly is it's the password for these administrative accounts.
Are you aware of whether that password is the same on other systems
Yes, sir, it is.
and every system you've looked at?
Every system I've looked at, yes, sir.
And I
sorry,
believe you said
I'm
that
an idiot.
from a cybersecurity
But maybe it's
standpoint,
actually better
how would you
that way.
characterize that?
That's an egregious violation of the basic security principles. I have to state that. You could be year one cybersecurity and know that you don't do
I'm
that.
sorry,
And
you guys. I'm
Because
high.
it's an
I really am.
admin password, what does
It is all
that mean
gibberish.
from a security point of
Good
view?
thing we didn't have the volume all the way up.
There are so many things that can be done as an administrator. We would take up a lot of time for me to list them. You could basically do anything you wanted to.
All right, sir. All right, do you have another video? I assume we're finished with that one, right?
Yes, sir, we are.
Okay.
And so the next one is going to be, and let me pause
The
it here to
time I
get the
went
setup.
down to Sandals.
And this is done a little
with my
bit more
girlfriend.
professional. So it's got some graphics in it. But what we're doing here is, again, this is the SQL database. We're still in appling, I'm sorry, but we're going to run through every county. And what I'm going to show you is that even though
What?
the passwords are different and their
Fuck
encryption
no.
keys are different, because they're accessible, they still expose the password.
All right,
And
sir.
so
Pick a card. any
on the
card.
right is another public website that does AES encryption and decryption. We're going to use the decryption
Oh,
portion.
really?
So
Oh,
the first thing we're going to do is we're going to run this query to find the keys, and this is simply it in the election event.
So we'll stop there for a second. Now, we've talked in this case about you run a SQL query and you can retrieve the unencrypted keys.
Yes, sir.
Is that
No,
what's
they're in his
happening in the
garage.
second pane?
Yes, that's
And
it.
so the query the form of the query, the computer command is what's up at the tip top of that pane.
Yes, sir.
And that's what tells the database what to show you.
Yes, sir.
All right. And it's,
And-
just kind of walk through the query so we know what it's asking for.
Okay, so from an initial query of where the keys are located, I identified the tables. That's why you see it says from election event. That's the table that's shown. And in the other demo where I was going to do live, I would
Is that
show
the right
you that
database
table
to
at
use?
first, but it's got a lot
Or
of
is that the
extra
right
things.
table
You
to
only
use?
want to see the keys. So this
How do
is
you
that
know?
query. It pulls
How
up
do you
all
know?
the pertinent, it pulls up all the pertinent keys. The one thing I want to
Getting
stress,
riled up.
and
I
for
like- I
everybody
like
to
an
pay
angry
attention that
Clay.
watches this, is pay attention to the X059 certificate
Okay,
data.
before you go
Right.
on, it says select name, and then it's got Rindell key, Rindell vector, X509 data,
It-
HMAC key.
Yes, those are the column names for those.
And so
Yeah.
the effect of this query is to tell the system to go to the election event table and show you the Rindell key, the Rindell vector, the X509 data, and the HMAC key.
Yes.
Thank you. All right, carry on.
So we've got the key, and you
Your
can see
Honor,
you're
I rest
partially
my
blurred
case.
out. Now, as we cut and paste those in,
This has turned
we're
out
going to
be a
go
much
over,
better show
now
than
we're
I
going to
had
go
planned.
for appling, and we're going to query, and I'm going to pause it right here. We're querying the tabulator user. So these are the passwords for all the different tabulators. And the thing that needs to be noted is they're all the same login, and notice they're all the same password. And again, they're encrypting passwords, which is just ridiculous in
Naughty.
itself. But so we're gonna,
Snappable.
now that we have that, we're gonna put that in the encrypted text.
All right,
eh.
pause there. So to summarize where we are,
Stop.
you
Hammer time.
retrieved the Rindell key and
And
vector
vector, yes, sir.
on the system from the election events table. You pasted those two values into the appropriate fields on the web page.
Yes, sir.
And now you've gone and selected a password that's in the encrypted password from the user table.
Yes, sir.
All right. And then what do you do with the password on this web page?
This password is used for the administrator to log
Clay,
into
who
the,
else do
oh, you
share
want to
this
see it
little
execute?
Process
yeah,
with this
so
little
just
workflow?
explain what's happening
Who
on
else
this
knows
web
about
page.
your
All right,
little
so if you see
workflow?
down at the bottom, and again, I partially blurred it out. This is one of the passwords in plain text. So this is what the administrator, when he goes to log in, the PIN that he would put in to run that tabulator.
And so what this demonstrates is that you can retrieve the encryption keys,
I hope
which are in
so,
plain
butterflies.
text, and
I
use them
sure
to
hope
decrypt
so.
an administrator's password.
Yes, sir.
All right, carry on.
I'd like the DOJ
And
to also.
So what we're going to do
Bandit.
is now we're going to go
Otherwise.
back, we're going to pick Bibb County, do the same thing. We execute the query, we get that, and notice.
Hold
that-
up one second, Mr. Parikh. When you execute the query, the result is displayed below the query in that middle column.
Yes,
All right, and so it's a row with columns, a single row with columns.
yes, sir.
And the columns are,
The columns are, the application calls from the column and per the row when it makes, software applications make queries to these databases. So it's got to identify what data to pull. And so the application will say, hey, I go to Rindell key because I need the encryption key for a certain administrator. And then basically it would write this stuff there. And it's got to verify. The encryption keys be used for verification to decrypt the files once they're taken on. And so.
all right, sir. And this result that we see Those are the encryption keys in plain text. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay.
the decrypted at the very bottom. Of course, I blurred a little bit of it out.
But over in the middle column, the query result is showing you encryption keys, right?
Yes,
And they're in plain text.
yes,
Okay, and that's how you're able to use them to decrypt the password.
yes.
All right, carry on.
And so we'll go back over, execute the same query to find the tabulator users. And as we can see, a lot more tabulators here, but again, all the same password. And so while we're cutting and filling and pasting in, I want to pause it right here because this is important from an audibility standpoint. You've got the same password and the same account logging in with no traceability to who did what. It only takes one nefarious person, one insider,
One bad apple
to do something,
that ruined the
and
whole bunch.
then it's game over. He can do it on every, or he or she can do it on every component. This is very
There's
poor
trouble and it rhymes with
credential
bubble.
management.
There's
And
trouble in these
Does that
Dominion
comply
systems and
with
it
the
rhymes with bubble.
VVSG?
no, it does not.
All right.
The VVSG states to use best practices, and this is not a best practice. It's a worst practice.
Oh my God, it's the
And
opposite.
we'll run through each and every county. Again,
It's
pay attention to the
horrendous.
XO5 non-certificates being the same across different counties.
It's a tough shrimp to eat.
And you see, they're different keys. We get a different password in each county, but they're still all easily done.
But you
All right,
built
sir.
this,
And that's the end of that one.
sir.
Yes, sir.
You built
Yes, sir.
that.
And
that
have you
correct?
got another one?
Yes, I've got one more.
Merrick Garland, I hope you're fucking watching this.
I want to make. All right.
Oh,
Oh,
we almost got his
wait.
porn history, but not quite.
Selected the wrong one.
I did see something about pancakes, but I don't know what that had to do with.
All right. So what we've got here is I'm going to do a little bit of what I call key math, as I'm going to refer to it. This is the database, Appling again, pulled up. I want to point out that, and I've already executed this other one, several people have, of just flipping the vote. And the reason I kept talking about the XO5 non-certificate, because I'm doing these things manually. This data can be collected. I can do these queries remotely. There's also a command line back in for studio management, which is on the system. So this stuff, once you've got connection on an internal network to the system, then this is easily done. This could be put on a USB drive. For example, USB drives are small. Our wireless devices for our Northrop Grumman corporate laptops, because where I work, we can't have them internal. They remove them because that's the only way to shut it off. Then you get a little, it's the same size as my mouse plug-in for the USB adapter. That's the wireless card. So that's how small. On that wireless card, I could also put, I could put the wireless card. I could put an application to make it think it's a keyboard, do the commands, all this in the background. I could put it in a phone cable card, in the power card, printer cord. That's how easy it is to put these scripts and execute them on the systems. And I want to bring that out because that's where we manipulated one digit for two candidates in that table, which would be least notable than this. But so what we're going to do, we're going to go down here. We're going to go to the stored procedures, which is where the majority of the work. What I want you to see is, and I did not open the other folder. This is just the stored procedures that are ran in the database for the application to work, a ton of them. But we're going to go to contest report results. We're going to execute the procedure. Now, what I'm going to do here, I'm putting in a variable because the application would do this in order to make it execute. It would send this automatically. And so what we're doing is we're putting in the variable so we can run it.
I actually just discovered them butterflies. Holy shit. I'm looking
and
at
as you see here,
settlement foundation,
you see that Donald J. Trump got 6,526. Joe Biden got 1,779. Now I'm going to use snippet because I don't have that great a memory. We're going to cover this up.
Oh,
So we've
Carrie.
got it frozen.
Because they didn't know how to work it, but now they do, and all
And
that
we're
information has been
going to
passed on
downsize that. Now I'm going to go
and
back
Vern and
and I'm going to
everybody else who's been
modify
working
the
with
actual stored
stupid
procedure
county
with just
clerks
a few
across the
lines of
country who
code.
fall for MAGA.
So we're going to scroll down toward the bottom,
Dumb is what
all
it
the
is.
way to the bottom, right before it goes, and I'll show you when we get
But
to it.
yeah, let's worry about something
I'm gonna
else
pause
that's
right there.
stupid and shiny
Notice,
and dumb
print
and
4 is add
irrelevant
totals
and actually
finished.
perhaps
So we're going to
intended
submit
to
this right
distract
before all the
you.
totals are calculated. And so what we're going to do, I'm going to put a hard return in there, hitting
Well, I'm
enter.
going to be looking
And
into
then I'm
them
going to,
butterflies,
I've
'cause
already
I saw that this weekend. And
got
it was
the
like,
instructions
what the fuck is
so
this?
to make this quicker and expedite. And so I'm copying these
There's
instructions
a lot more militia
and pasting them in there.
chuds
And we're going to
on
pause
my
this right
timeline,
here.
and I think
Notice
the
that
chatter
choice
is up.
ID number 2
I'm just going to say it.
is getting
But that's my little window into
1,000 votes
this
taken
world.
away.
You
And
know, I'm no
choice
expert,
ID number 1 is going to get
but
1,000.
I'd eat my hat if the chatter
So
isn't
I'm going
up.
to execute it. So now it's functionally stored. And then I'm going to go over here. We see how the totals are. Now we're going to execute this again. And we see that the totals have changed.
This was the point, you
And how-
guys.
And,
This is
and
the
right
point.
here, we're comparing them. So from the screenshot, so you can see that they've changed. This can be done on any race, anything. And
I know
again,
I'm not the only
this is
that
one
talked about
of the
this, but I
2,000
was
ways to
obsessed-
skin this
am
cat.
obsessed with it, clearly.
All right, sir. Would the encryption keys allow a
This
bad
part in
actor
particular
to perform this
is
exploit
one of the most
without
damaging
detection?
things as a country
Yes, sir.
we have been through, I think. For the
And
future of,
that's the third and last demo?
I don't know.
Yeah, yes, sir, it is. Unless you wanted to see the decryption of the DVD files. But that's a little bit more complicated. It's not complicated. It's easy to do, but we would be seeing it in the command line terminal, not the application itself. So I think for most people who aren't nerdy, they wouldn't.
in order for
You
it
can
to
see the
work.
candidates' names, choices and stuff like that, but
And when you
Yeah, I think that
when you
that
let
one is a
people
little too
into it
nerdy
that
for
Yeah.
us.
that clearly do not have integrity,
We went to law school
You
for a reason.
are
Yeah.
actually allowing them
Which most
to
of us, it's
turn
because we're
you
not
into
good at math.
countries that I have
Um,
been in
Okay.
when that's happened, where it's extremely fragile.
Now, you've already talked a little bit about the DVS Corp 08
So
exclamation
please,
point and the common
Can we
passwords.
start to
Uh,
focus on
We'll
what
talk
is gonna
about that in
actually
terms of
right
the
in 30
VVSG and
days?
certification requirements and what kind of risks it
Fuck
creates.
us.
it's a significant amount of
Yikes.
risk. Now, the VVSG states that you're supposed to
only
use
takes a
best
few
practices
states
for
to fuck up the
your
certification,
authentication methods.
regardless of method.
And this is definitely not one of them.
They can
The
create
worst
fraud
thing
and
is
then
in my
point to fraud. You
investigations
know
of the
what I mean?
database
Or they
I've
can just
seen
point to-
that these
I can't
usernames
scream
and
this loud
passwords
enough.
are the same in other states. So what that means, for example, someone from Arizona or Colorado could just wander in, or they could share that account information that has it. So by them being the same, not only just in the state of Georgia, but with other systems, it allows now the password can be known by anybody. So you get somebody in Colorado that says, hey, calls a friend in Georgia, boom, and it's over. Because they can access, they have the credentials. They don't even need to go through
That's
this.
not
They're already going to be able to
happening.
get on the
You know
component
what? Not
and then do
everybody's a
whatever they
fucking
needed to
criminal
do.
like you are, Clay.
So the password in Colorado is the same as Georgia?
It's
Yes, sir. In my
needs to be a
declaration of the
tiny
Supreme
bit.
Court, I actually highlight and show
11,780 votes. It's just one more than
In
he
light of your
needed.
testimony about how the system in Georgia does not comply with the requirements for certification, can you help the court understand how it got certified?
I can simply state what I've stated for a while, that the certification is simply more than a rubber stamping outfit. There's a
Okay,
reason I left in
objection.
2017, because I did
Objection?
this
That
to
sounds like
keep
a
technically
feeling, Your Honor.
proficient. I got to create different versions of virtual machines. I hacked in, matter of fact, this sort of like a rock star in some of the labs, because when I showed the guys the simplest things they'd never seen done before, I can tell you, I taught them about how to
I
test
get it.
tamper
Now
seals,
I
because
get
when
it.
I
This is
started, there
just an
weren't security
extended
seals
dick
on the
measuring
voting systems.
contest.
I showed them how to
Or
pick
just a-
locks, because
let me
most
show
of the
you
locks
my
on these
dick.
tabulators and
I
are
get it.
incorporated
I
on
get
them
it.
are what's called wafer
I
locks,
get
which
it.
are easy to
I
pick.
get it.
I've
Sorry.
shown, we
Sorry.
actually using an alligator
Yeah,
clip from
sorry
things,
about that.
showed them how to encrypt a secured storage compartment for poll books. Those are the things that I taught them. They have no security people. And again,
Yeah, no
I went to a
they have
professional
no
staffing
security
company,
people?
you know,
Really?
not a full-time employee.
Wow, what is
I
CISA
was
even
the
doing?
only
Oh my
security person. I
God.
could not
Are
speak
they
for
what, are they all
SLI,
going out for
but
donuts?
for
and
Wiley Labs, which
margaritas
transitioned to
together?
NTS, which no longer, well,
Somebody
NTS still does the hardware portion
Dominion
for
slipping
Pro
something
V&B
into
and Pro V&B.
CISA's
They have no
drinks?
security
What's
professionals
happening here?
in
Is
there.
it bigger than that?
They barely
Diddy somehow
comprehend
involved in
software
this,
quality
sir,
testing,
would you
let
say?
alone
Do you have a
security
feeling
testing.
about that? You want to share with the group?
As you understand the
Sorry, I
VVSG
am talking over
requirements,
him. There's a reason.
is it a continuing obligation that election systems used by the states meet those standards?
Yes, and you should be able to meet those very low standards.
Yeah, do you think you should? Do you think you should?
Is
You
there
should,
any
huh?
reason
Yeah, good
that,
idea.
well, why don't
Yeah,
you
you're an expert.
tell us whether these Dominion systems can be brought into compliance with the certification requirements for encryption keys?
They could be. I'm highly doubtful that it would
Hello,
be
Dominion.
anytime soon.
Yes,
My
I'd like to
suggestion
report a
is to have
murder.
a mitigation
Hello,
plan in
Dominion.
place and to make
You
the
might want to get
appropriate
over here right
engineering
away.
change orders
I'd
and
like to
modify
report a
the
murder.
logging and stuff and make it
I
more
got a dead body over
transparent
here
and
on the
more
stand.
viewable. Allow
Yeah,
these
okay.
logs
All right.
and
Yep, you're
and
welcome.
again,
Bye.
and I state this as a systems person in IT with over 20 years, system logs are not proprietary. They contain no confidential information within them. DOD even makes sure they have a standard that you can't even have the username or their password
Merrick
in the same
Garland.
log file.
Get your fucking ass off
What
your
you do
chair and get
find, and
over
I'm just
here
going to give you
right
this
now because
example,
some shit's
when you
really
put your
going down in
password in as your
Georgia, and you
username,
need to
we
be on
still
top of
see
it.
that in the log file. So then we have to look at another portion where we remind that user, please go change your password because you've just identified. And we're the only ones in security that see that. That's the extent as far as critical infrastructure in the
You and the other
DOD
temps
realm
in security are
goes.
the only ones that
Now,
see that? Is that what
voting
you just
systems
told
are
us?
been deemed
What the
critical
fuck?
infrastructure by Department of Homeland Security, but yet we don't make them maintain and follow the same critical infrastructure requirements.
How do
That's
you
why I'm saying
know?
if the
Are
Dominion
you an
voting system
expert
can't
on
meet these
the
low
Department of
standards, it's
Homeland
bad. So
Security's IT
mitigation, you open
protocols?
up the logs,
Are you kidding me
you allow
right now?
transparency, you start doing
That's
the
what you're
logging, and you
doing?
put those steps in place to allow trust and confidence to come back into the elections and
Please
make it
share the
more auditable.
broadcast. I don't
Are
And
there
care if you
any
want to share
other
the original broadcast or my
transparency
rebroadcast,
or
my
disclosure
restreaming.
measures that would help
I don't
mitigate
care.
the risks that
I
you've
want
identified?
everyone to watch this.
yes, I've started a fairly detailed list, but that's pretty lengthy. And that would be something that I'm unsure. I believe the state election board, I know they do rules in Alabama. Our state election board approves the engineering change orders. And so to me, it would be the state request
What?
engineering change orders to make these small
What?
changes as far as
They're
logging
Dominion
auditability, and
proprietary
then on the
machines.
county or the
What does
state's behalf to
proprietary
make
mean?
sure
Can
that they're
somebody
public
ask this
records
douche
so that they
whistle
can be checked by third
what the
party.
fucking,
Would it
the nozzle
mitigate
head,
any of the risks you've identified?
the
It
human
would
dirty
help you
Q-tip?
identify that the risk occurred and actually pursue and possibly identify the perpetrators
All right,
or
so-
the cause of the incident.
So let me ask you this. If there was a requirement to produce promptly system logs, ballot images, and cast vote records, would that help?
Yes, sir, it would.
And would that change the voter's user experience on the machines in any way?
Not in any way, sir.
And are those records already exist in the ordinary operation of the system?
Yes, sir. The only thing that I would add on that is to ensure that all ballot images are retained. A lot of them, to include my own state, do not retain them all. And to me, that is a digital chain of custody infraction. You've lost the chain of custody. You're taking something
'Cause it
that
doesn't
started as
really
a sheet of paper that went into a tabulator. It's transformed. A picture's taken. That picture is what's
just
analyzed by
a
the software. It's
stupid
now in digital
girl
form. Every process of the digital
sitting
form, which would
here
include,
like
once
a
that image is
fool.
taken, all the hash files there, all the identifying fingerprint
Democracy's
signatures for each file to
easy
show that
come,
it's not manipulated, because it
easy
can be
go.
manipulated. And you track it
Get
all the way
more
through, and all that stuff
high,
should be auditable.
but stay low.
But to have those images, it should be required. I complained about this when they started allowing vendors the options and the states to turn the option off. Because two,
Check
you're
your
evaluating the ballot differently for one
registration.
voter than another.
Do you have any understanding of whether HAVA imposes
You-
any
I'm
auditability
sorry, I lost
requirements
it.
Yes, sir, they do.
of the nature you're just describing?
Yes, sir. They require all system logs, and those are often not provided. The best way to actually get them sometimes is to grab an image of the file. So then you get the operating system logs and all that. Any forensic investigator would tell you this. You need all the possible data you can get. And this would include any components.
And producing the records that are already maintained by the system in the ordinary course, to your understanding, does that impose any significant burden on election officials?
I thought
No,
this
it
would
does
be
not.
something like Lindell and his team. I thought that would be something you could actually like investigate. I
That's
don't
all the
understand.
questions I have for you, Mr. Parikh. Thank you very much.
Okay,
All right,
here's the
Mr. Tyson,
cross.
why don't we get started, see how much headway we can make.
Certainly.
I know, sorry. Hey, Oren, how are you?
Hello again,
love?
Mr. Parikh. Good to see you. All right, so I wanted to kind of drill down a little bit. As I understood your testimony, you're offering opinions about the storage of these encryption keys and the compliance with both VVSG and HAVA. Is that fair to say?
Yes, but the main thing is about FIPS 140-2, which the VVSG require.
And so it's your conclusion essentially that the EAC improperly certified the Dominion equipment that's in use in Georgia, right?
They took
mean,
what the
really.
voting system test labs gave them. What I would tell you is that system testing is incomplete and not to par. And
How do you know?
whether
How
it's
do
considered, but
you
I've
know?
got it from Wiley
do you know?
employees, to include
How-
the same employee who started Pro V&V, told me directly, we are just
Oh,
a
and I'm going to
tester.
stop you before you give hearsay testimony here.
Yeah.
And
Right.
that's what somebody
Thank
else
you.
said.
Right.
So I can just be clear on this. You're not saying that the Dominion 5.5A system we use in Georgia is not EAC certified today, right? You're just saying it shouldn't be, right?
It got an EAC certification.
And that certification has
drunk,
not
sir?
been revoked, correct?
That's correct. Also not followed is the EAC's election guidance, and that the component should be suspended until an investigation is
do
done
you
before it's
know?
utilized in an
How
election.
do you know? How do you
So
know,
from your
sir?
perspective, the EAC made a number of errors when it certified and did not revoke the Dominion 5.5A system, right?
So I have to
Yes or
explain
no?
this. And again, I'm not an attorney or a lawyer, but I did read
You're
the Help
hardly an
America
IT
Vote Act. And when I
specialist.
first saw voluntary voting systems guidelines, I said, well, why are standards and requirements voluntary? I'm from a DOD world. And so bear with me on this. So I'm used to requirements, you follow them. There's standards, you follow them. You get certified, you meet them all. They're voluntary. I had to go back and reread the Constitution because the federal government cannot dictate to the states how they run their elections.
Oh,
And
there
that's
we
why they're
go.
voluntary.
Here
But
we
once
go.
the state says that it's their requirement to be federally certified, then it is a requirement. And so necessarily
This guy's a
the way
sovereign
you're
citizen,
leading it would also,
baby.
you would have to include the Secretary of State failed before I would
He
say,
says, just get
but
rid of
both
all
those
of it.
parties,
Let's get
But
us
an
a king.
EAC failure is part of what you're talking about, right?
as well as, yes, or as well as the Secretary of State.
So let's talk a little bit about the EAC certification
I need
process,
the money that
because
funded
I
all
believe
these
as you
guys.
testified,
That's where
the
we
EAC
start. We look at the
certifies
money
different
that
voting
funds these
systems,
guys
right?
and then work our way back.
Yes.
It's not hard.
And
Well, I mean, that part's
the
not hard.
VVSG
I hope
1.0
soon.
standards are the standards that all current voting systems are
No, I'd
certified
like to see his
to,
face when he's
right?
saying these things.
Are you specifically talking about Georgia?
I'm saying as a general matter, do you know?
No, there are actually other certification levels, only less than a handful.
But VVSG 2.0 has only been adopted recently by the EAC. Is that right?
That's correct.
And in order to get certification by the EAC also certifies voting system test labs, right?
That is correct.
And ProVNV is a certified voting system test lab by the EAC, right?
Yes, they are.
And when the voting system test lab makes its report to the EAC and the EAC certifies, there is then a version of the software that is retained by both the voting system test lab and the EAC to say this is kind of the gold standard software, right?
The voting system test lab actually retains that.
And any change in the voting system that's more than a de minimis change that you reference requires a new certification, correct?
That's not necessarily true. There are varying parts of the changes, but most of them do, yes.
And that would include even, for example, installing an operating system software update that could require a new certification from the EAC, right?
Not necessarily true.
But it could,
Well,
right?
it could.
It could.
Then that's true. You stupid
And
shit.
as I understood your testimony, there were two
I'll
main
help
areas that
go
I
ahead.
understood you to say didn't comply, in your view, with the VVSG standards. One was the storage of encryption keys, and the other was the reuse of passwords. Do I have that right?
That's correct.
Okay. And you'd agree that on the Dominion system, encryption keys change with each election, correct?
As I demonstrated in the video, they were different between each of the counties within Georgia, but that's irrelevant to the point because they're unprotected.
So just so we're clear for the court, it's your understanding that at each election, each county has a unique encryption key, and then each of those encryption keys also changes not just between counties, but also from election to election, right?
Speaking specifically about Georgia, but in some Dominion systems, that's not the case.
But in Georgia, it is,
Which
right?
ones?
Yes.
And so if someone had the 2020 encryption keys for Bibb County, Georgia, they would not then be able to access automatically the 2024 Cobb County election database. Is that right?
Well, if you taught the keys, there's a reason I talked about the X059 certificate
Yes or
being
no,
the
sir?
same and good for 10 years. You don't have to have the keys necessarily to get to the system. Once I get to the system, I get the keys. For example, let's go off what you said. The 2020 keys are irrelevant. But to get them, you know where you got them from and how you acquired them. It would only take you a minute to get the new keys.
So let's talk about that piece, because you'd have to have physical access to the election management server to get that database.
Not necessarily, no, sir.
Okay. What non-physical access method could you utilize to obtain the election databases?
Would you like me to go over the 5 APTs for standalone air gap systems
No.
within the last
Can
10
you
years,
just
or the
give your
recent one where they
evidence
can
that you know this
exfiltrate
is
data from
happening?
the
That's
sound,
what
from
he's
the color,
asking
from
for,
your
you
monitor?
dipshit.
That's a way.
So it is your testimony that anyone without physical access to to an election management server can access the database?
I did not say anyone, sir. So what I'm telling you is, if you rely on physical security, and by the way, I'm a physical security subject matter expert in the state of
'Cause
Alabama. I do know
worked
a thing
in the Great
about it.
America Mall. Don't laugh.
You
I had
are
my own
already
Segway.
gone. You cannot rely on physical security. As someone who's looked at some of the voting locations and run by counties, they're improper. They do not meet regular physical
They are
security standards, so they're
improper?
not really secure
Are they
facilities.
improper, sir?
These systems aren't
Oh, that's
stored.
my
There are
new
improper
favorite word,
procedures on
baby.
how the voting systems are stored
Improper.
and the auditability of when they start them up.
improper.
So
The hell?
not anyone, but the majority of people who watch a few
Sorry.
YouTube videos on Kali Linux or anything else and vulnerabilities,
Well,
and
then
spend a couple
anyone.
hours of research. And
Well,
again,
then-
we're talking about
Well,
critical
then anyone
infrastructure
can.
for $1 trillion economy. It's fairly easy to do.
Now, we can agree that new election project files are created in Georgia for each new election, right?
Yes, you have to create a new project file that's specific to the election.
And part of that election project file is a new election database like the ones you review, right?
No, sir. It's a new database. That's correct. The structure of the database and the composition of the database maintain the same. You have a template to where the data that you put in for the election through the EED, in Dominion's case, Election Event Designer, you put all your data into that. It does the configuration for that specific database. But the structure, the keys are stored in the same manner.
So just so we're clear, the structure of the database is the same because that's the Dominion system's method of using that database. But the information in that database would be different for each election. Is that fair?
Yes, sir. And it's still unencrypted and in the vulnerable database.
All you need to do is get
And
your
that would
Annie
involve
Oakley decoder
different
that you got
candidate
in your,
names and different
your
races
Captain
that are
Crunch
in the
that morning,
database,
and I'm
right?
telling you, you can do it.
That's correct.
And it would involve different encryption keys as well, right?
But not necessarily. If you had a lazy county worker that wanted to use the same encryption key, just
Can't
like we see they use the same
trust the voting
passwords,
systems that
that could
exist and
easily
not
be,
try
that
and
can be
undermine
done.
them with
Is it your
nonsense like
understanding
this?
that county officials in Georgia build election project files?
No, sir. But that leads us down another path with the way the technical data packages, which I've reviewed plenty of, and the way these things are sold.
I bet you reviewed
I will
a
tell
lot of
you,
packages.
and this
No,
may
I'm
be
kidding.
irrelevant to Georgia, but my
Yeah,
state
what'd
of
you say?
Alabama, we
Seriously, your
violate our state
anti-government slip is
constitution by
showing.
having
It's
it
so true.
contracted out to a
But it's
third-party
true.
vendor.
No, I
So
didn't.
what I would
didn't,
tell
but I
you
can
is
only
many
imagine,
counties
Jim.
let the vendors access it. And again, a vendor, a contractor is an insider threat.
So you don't know how
Oh no,
election project
he
files are
throws
built
fits.
for
I just
Georgia
linked something
elections,
earlier
right?
in the chat where he threw
From
a
what
hissy
I've
fit at Terry
gathered,
Lake's
I'm not
trial.
100% on, but they are created by the vendor.
Yeah, let's
And you've never
reform
reviewed the
insurance
process
industry,
that
please.
Georgia
Thank you.
uses to deliver election project files to county officials, right?
That process specifically, no.
And you've never reviewed the process that counties use to test voting equipment with logic and accuracy testing for Georgia elections. Is that correct?
Logic and accuracy testing are nothing but a semi-weak functional test of the system. They have absolutely no security relevance. What you would do prior to an LNA test each election, what you would do acceptance test or a trusted build test, which it only does file integrity and basically say, I got the software I'm supposed to have. And that's on the base system. But because you have an election project that's going to change a few things, so the limited hashes that they provide the counties to validate that, it probably would be irrelevant. But to say that logic and accuracy, I refer to them as a dog and pony show. It's a warm and fuzzy.
But to be clear,
Okay,
you've
a
not
trusted
reviewed, even
build
though
is
you don't
not
think they're
logic and
valuable.
accuracy.
You haven't
Those are two
reviewed
different
Georgia's
things.
logic
We've
and
learned
accuracy
that in
processes,
Colorado.
right?
No.
And you haven't reviewed the process that is used, well, let me go back. In terms of the election project file, what you were looking at in the demonstrations you showed us was a post-election file, correct?
And you keep referring to it as a project file, you mean the database?
Right, the database.
Election database, yes.
Okay. And in order to manipulate what's in the database, you would need to get access to the system somehow. And then you would need to then get to the encryption keys.
Gosh,
Is that correct?
That's correct. Easily done.
And then the individual who, or our hypothetical person we're talking about, would need to obtain access to each component of the system if the program file had already been distributed out to those components, right?
Not necessarily. Again, there are literally hundreds upon hundreds of attack vectors. Based on the data in the different counties I've examined in Georgia, I would say there's at least 6 different attacks that occurred, or techniques in the attacks.
It was improper.
They did different counties and different methods. And again, that's because you know your target. Some counties are larger. You evaluate the process and procedures, and you find where the vulnerabilities are. And so
What is this?
My review of
spherical-
process
spher-
and procedures, which I
spherical
bet would be
cow.
lacking like most other states where I have
Quadrilateral
reviewed it,
cow.
would be that. But it's irrelevant because the keys are in a highly vulnerable system with hundreds of vulnerabilities in an insecure
Yes.
database,
I
unprotected.
got joints. They're multiplying.
And you mentioned
No.
several times the different
I have-
attack vectors.
I have 3 joints.
You don't have any evidence that anyone has ever manipulated
Left.
any of those attack vectors in a Georgia election, right?
I will reiterate what I said earlier that Dr. Halderman has reiterated. If you do some of these vulnerabilities, there will be no detection, especially in a system that does not upsize the logging information and constantly overwrites the Windows logs. These are not best practices. You cannot audit or track down anything. Half the logs are not recorded. The application logs that are developed are
Minecraft folder
improperly
he's
done
got?
anyway. They don't even go down to the millisecond, which is a best practice standard.
So to be clear, my question was a little more specific. You don't have any evidence that anyone has ever utilized these attack
Yes.
vectors
Would be-
in an actual Georgia election, right?
There would be no evidence.
So you don't have any, right?
Of course, you're not going to have any. But if I attacked them, you still wouldn't have any.
What?
And it's your testimony that even if the encryption
Ooh, that's
keys were stored
pretty.
in an
I
encrypted
love that
way,
one. Thank you.
you would still
That's so
consider the Dominion
pretty.
system to be vulnerable to attack, right?
It would decrease the likelihood because you're going to knock out the low-level kitty scripters. That's why.
But I believe your testimony was that there would be a long list of things you would want to see changed in the Dominion system to make it more secure, right?
It's a detailed list, and as I do when I provide, and I've provided it for counties in Arizona and in other places, because believe me, I think my folder count for different states is 26 currently. And people ask for help and advice. And so I do that. A lot of it is process procedure
26
reviews.
states, did
That's
you
why I'll
say?
state LNA testing
Did you say
overall
26 you have
are a farce.
connection to, right?
And
What?
so
Excuse me?
the long list, it's dependent. I started writing one
what's
specifically
APT
for Georgia
excellence?
because I told them, I don't think the
Are
vendors will
kitty
come through in
scripters?
time.
I
But
thought it was
so you
kitty
got to
like
do,
cat.
we do it in the Department of Defense, they do it in Health and Human
Because they
Services,
really want
Department
you
of
to see
Labor,
this
all the other
illegible
programs and
document,
agencies
Carrie.
I've
Come on
supported.
now.
You have to have a mitigation plan.
He
If you
made this
can't fix a
video.
vulnerability and remediate it on the spot, you've got to have a
I
mitigation
can show
plan.
you the
Every
questionnaire.
agency in
He's
the
just not
Department of
showing on the
Defense has
screen
to
that I have.
report back up those plans and in a timely manner, and it depends on the criticality. What I would tell you is, it's based off what I saw the EAC in the states talk about between some governor's email and the remediation times. Oh, I think it came from CISA. Those remediation times were obnoxious. And then they try to keep it secret from the public on the
Well,
mitigation of
obnoxious
these
sounds like a
vulnerabilities.
feeling.
And
And
the-
keeping
the
it
timelines
secret
were-
sounds like a feeling.
It's just ridiculous.
Not, that sounds like a feeling too.
So I believe your testimony was that if there was a
Fucking
production
hell.
of ballot images, logs, and cast vote
Do you
records,
cry
that
after
would help
sex,
as
sir?
this mitigation
Yes,
plan
it
you're
would.
talking about? Okay.
Yes.
I'm just kidding.
But you'd agree that wouldn't address any of the undetectable hacking you've testified about, right?
It would help identify that something happened. There are different things that you can do. For example, you can just look at the election data as precincts come in and analyze from a mathematical standpoint. There's one, you cannot fight math. It can only do certain things. So when you had and I'm talking from a security incident response, a security operations center perspective. If I saw some of the anomalies like I've done in the different states in the elections, you say that, you immediately notify a CERT team, image that server, capture that network traffic. We have to analyze because there's an anomaly there and you have to investigate.
He's just in the little tiny
There's
corner.
been
but
no
it's not him,
investigations
it's
of any
the-
detail.
it's
And
the
even if you do,
cross-examiner.
the way the systems are built and configured, they do not log it. And so it's one thing to try to find
No, not
evidence.
China,
And you keep going on the
Serbia.
evidence, but of
You know,
it there's hack.
Disturbia,
And
Serbia.
I, Dr. Haldeman, have said there would be no evidence. But the thing is about the trust of the system. Would you put your money in
Make sure
something
you
that you couldn't
stretch.
guarantee wasn't hacked?
Captain Crunch sounds
It's
so weird
crazy
right now.
to
I know,
base it on
I
that and
shouldn't have
trust a
said it.
system that has no integrity.
Is it your testimony that Georgia voters cannot trust the outcome of the 2024 election if the system is used as it's currently configured?
Yes.
And in terms of the various pieces you said of things you would analyze and look at, you'd agree that's a kind of a policy decision of where you're going to put resources to investigate. Is that right?
I'm not quite sure I understand your question.
Sure.
Yeah,
So
well,
we were
not
talking
sure.
earlier about the cast vote records, the ballot images, and the log files that you believe should be made available. You'd agree that how many
Russia.
resources to devote to those types of investigations is a policy question, right?
It can be considered a policy question, but again, these voting systems are paid for by tax money, which is the voters. And so to make something publicly available and
Proprietary information.
if you
so
look at
people can
HABA,
hack
Title
into it,
III,
sir? Is that what you
Section
want?
301,
Because that's what
and the
you've
requirements of
created.
Section A, a voter not only has to verify and independently check his ballot cast, that voter has the same right to ensure that his ballot was done that. And it varies from state. I've read a lot of state constitutions, and so that varies. But
Well, have
that's
you?
something
How
that should be
many?
done anyway, to make them publicly thing. Now, if you're trying to go off to like the way Fulton County said about it would take them 50,000 hours to gather data, I could pull 24 database people in here that could show them how to do it in an hour.
Really?
And so resources
that
to
sounds
access public
almost,
records
ridiculous.
and to take,
Yeah,
extract
that's what
these
that sounds
logs
like.
and back them up
Complete
and put them
bullshit.
somewhere secure for people to be able to request them is not that labor intensive.
So let's talk a little bit about the data and the pieces here. When did you download these Georgia databases that you began your review on?
Oh, I don't know the exact date. It was a while back prior to our submission for
Really?
the,
Who were you
the
with
Lake
when you
Fincham
did it?
case to the Supreme Court.
And that's the Arizona case you were referring to?
Yes,
So at least several months ago?
yes.
Do you recall when you first started preparing your declaration for
He's
this
available.
case?
It was somewhere in between my trips to the state. I've come here several times to talk to the state election board on behalf of some of the complaints
Oh,
there.
really?
And I've been asked to speak,
Really?
and I've been to ask technical questions.
Oh, really?
And I will give Georgia kudos. At least your state election board is listening to the voters and hearing
Oh,
things,
stop
unlike my
yourself.
home state.
Well, that sounds like a
So
feeling
it'd be
too.
safe to say probably several months is when you started on the declaration as well?
I would say probably after late July, I think.
Do you recall when you first identified the encryption keys being stored in an unencrypted way in Georgia?
In Georgia was when I got those databases. I saw the same exact thing that I saw in Arizona and Colorado.
What's the night?
And had
that
you
the
reviewed
rights
Dr.
went
Halderman's
out in
report from the curling
Georgia?
case before you downloaded those
Mm.
databases?
That's the night that.
When was that released?
I believe it was the summer of 23 was the
Yes,
testimony.
the most definitely. Believe me, people. I got several copies of it. People asked me to review it and give my opinion.
And you're aware Dr. Halderman discusses this encryption key issue in his report, right?
Yes, it does.
So was that when you first learned about the encryption key issue, not when you looked at the databases?
I knew there were issues with keys
you have
from
like
other
a
reports,
preconceived
but then
outcome?
again, knowing this vulnerability and the amount of stuff that was going on in different states,
The
it
amount of
didn't
stuff, like how much stuff?
register until I
stuff?
really focused in on the Kerry Lake case and examining that. And when Arizona wanted their database
Oh, and how'd that
examined.
go for you? I have a tape of
In
you
the Kerry
throwing
Lake
a
case
fucking
that you
hissy
referenced,
fit.
the court didn't order any relief in that case, right?
Yeah, she lost.
No, they did
2
not.
times. 2. Count them, 2. And that bitch was there every time.
So I know we're about 12:30. I'm about to shift to a different area, maybe a good break point.
And this is a good stopping point. And yes,
Okay.
let's take a lunch recess. We'll make it somewhat abbreviated and hopefully folks packed. Yes, sir.
All right.
Are you going to ask me any questions to where I need my demo? Can I shut my laptop down and put
Good
it away?
question.
That is a great question. I don't believe I will. I have some questions generally about them, but I don't think we'll need to look at them to answer
Okay.
those questions.
All right, feel
Yeah,
free to
we don't need to
disconnect.
look at your
Thank you, sir.
bullshit data.
Let's take a 45 minutes. So let's be back ready to go at 1:15. I'll instruct the witness that while you can discuss the matter with counsel, not to discuss it with any witnesses in this case that may testify here. For the parties here, if anyone wants to assemble in the jury room over the lunch break, they can do so. We also have another side room that might only hold like 4.
All
So
right.
if someone wants to take that, I'll let y'all arm wrestle over it.
Here's what I'm
And we'll be back at
gonna
1:15.
do.
All right, thank y'all.
Okay, here's what I'm going to do. Since I have to do some stuff around the house and I'm on a little bit of a deadline, I'm going to go ahead and shut this portion, this part 1 down. But I will come back in about 45 with a new stream Wake and Bake 2, the sequel. Oh my God, Wake and Bake 2, the SQL. Get it? I mean, I'm funny without even trying. Okay, why do I never, why? 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 Anyway, I'll come back in about 45 minutes with a new stream. And then if I have to run off that stream, at least you'll have this running so that we can see all the nonsense. Ouch, that's happening. Okay? All right. Thank you so much for coming. Please share the broadcasts and the channel. Let's grow this. Let's put out information that is actually helpful and stop doing sideshow bobs, please. And thank you. Can we? Is there any room for fucking funny but serious shit? Just saying. Asking for a friend. Anyway. All right. Thank you so much. LOL. Oh, God. Yeah, really. Yeah, he's read all the best constitutions. He can't tell you which ones, but there he is in all his glory. Oh, that's a great picture. I'm going to leave that one for the end. All right. I'll see you all in a little bit. Take care. Go potty. Grab some more coffee. Get a lunch if you're in the zone. Grab your lunch. Or just have a snack. Keep your blood sugar up in a healthy level. Okay? All right. Okay. All right. I'll see you guys really, really, really soon. And again, thanks for coming. This